Hello, and welcome to the For the Love of Fiction podcast, a podcast about narrative and character through a wide range of mediums. I am your host, Gavin Groves, and with me is my co-host, Mark Tobit.
Hello there, this is Mark Tobit. How are you doing?
I actually, I was supposed to read that, so it's the same every time, and then I just realised as I started talking that I didn't have it written down. It might have not been the same. So we'll see what happens anyway. How you doing, man?
Same old, can't complain. Just been
Yeah?
enjoying things, you know?
I'm enjoying the fact I just had a rather lush chili that I made from scratch. That was fantastic. I made so much as well, I got enough to eat for the next 2 days. I like the easy life. So, yeah, this is the second episode now of our podcast that we are working on. Just wanted to ask you how you feel about the first episode.
Oh, well, initially nervous. I do think that we need to find a little bit more of a flow, but I think we're getting there.
How dare you?
I think once we get over our initial jitters, we will sort of like start to, more of the character will come out, so to speak. But
yes, I was not very happy with some of my factual errors, referring to the G1 Transformers cartoon as 1986, because it's obviously not a 1986 cartoon. It was the animated movie that came out in 1986, but the cartoon started in 1984, I want to say, off the top of my head. So, I don't know. You just get things wrong when you're talking, don't you?
No, the internet is known for being a forgiving place. So.
Is it really? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Some of the things I read on Twitter today, I can't even bring them up. Believe me. But yes, this episode 2 is it's become something of a Batman special. It turns out, as we've put this together, we're going to slightly rearrange how the show is going to work, and because with the first episode, which aside from the introductory conversation between me and Mark, I envisioned it as a series of what we've been enjoying. And I wasn't expecting it to be an hour and 40 minutes, nowhere near that. I had planned to discuss the movie we're going to discuss today in that episode and a game. And obviously none of that happened. It turns out me and Mark are very good at waffling. Well practiced, aren't we? Well practiced.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we're going to be a slight change. I imagine as this is an ongoing experiment, we may well change things up as we go, but we're going to do like a what we've been enjoying segment, brief segment, let's say, now, and then when we will be discussing a movie, it will just be a long discussion. But also in this episode, we're hoping to give you our top 5 Batman actors. I have no idea what Mark's going to pick. Have you got your notes?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I've actually got notes. I'm going to be honest, I actually came ready to play today. I've put pen to paper, and I actually have written word in front of me, which is new ground for me, I'm going to be honest.
I'm looking forward to it. I kind of imagine that we both might have the same number 1, but 5, 4, 3, and 2 will be interesting. Do you have an honourable mention as well?
Yeah. One that, whilst I don't feel is entitled to the top 5, but earned it through different means.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna throw it to you, Mark, and or would you like to go first, or should I go first? We've been discussing what we've been into for the last week or so.
I can go first, if that'd be all right.
Then after you, mate. Tell me, what have you been into?
Well, so far, what I've been enjoying firstly, I'm still making my way through Silicon Valley. I'm heading into season 5, and it's still going strong. I'm still enjoying it. A little bit down to realise that I've only got about a season and a half left to it, and I'm actually kind of rationing those episodes now. Really appreciating each one. It's a show I'm definitely going to rewatch, but the first time is always the best. What else am I into? I've been rereading a series of old comic books, some old stuff that I had, specifically Marvel Zombies.
Oh, Marvel Zombies.
It's a classic era. I forget how far back it was released, but it's the story, an alternative world story of a zombie outbreak in the Marvel Universe.
Wasn't it like late 90s, early 2000s?
No, I think it might have been a little later than that. It might have been towards the end of the 2000s.
Right, okay. I've never read it. I've seen it and whatever.
It's a very interesting series. I mean, at the end of the day, the best thing about these Elseworld stories is they can go to town and anyone can die, so to speak. And it's a lot of fun. And
I'm not sure if I've ever considered it, really. I don't know.
I've got a thing for Elseworld stories in general. I mean, whether it be the likes of Injustice, Red Sun, Deceased, or even Flashpoint,
or
all of those stories,
there's one fantastic Elseworld you didn't mention there.
Which one?
The Amalgam Age of comics.
Oh, absolutely. I love those.
Fantastic.
However cheesy they may be in times, they were always fantastic.
Batclaw, fantastic.
Oh, I still love the fact that the combination of Sabretooth and Joker was called Hyena.
Oh, of course. That's brilliant. I've forgotten about that.
I mean, some of this stuff writes itself. It's just... Although a little less so on Robin and Jubilee forming Sparrow.
I'm not sure about that.
But you can see that the writers were having fun when they were putting together some of those characters. I don't know. It's very much a time, something of its era, so to speak. So
it was late 90s, wasn't it? I want to say that the Batman / Batclaw segment, one of them, I think they did a couple of volumes, didn't they? Was drawn in the animated style.
Tim.
Bruce Timm.
Yeah,
Bruce Timm style.
Yeah, it very much had that look to it, and it worked well, especially with the Wolverine.
I could really do with reading it again, actually. I remember thinking it was brilliant. I don't know if it was you owned it or my dad owned it or someone. I remember seeing it in the comic shop.
Yeah, because they did a couple of omnibuses, didn't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Other than that, I've been listening to the odd podcast here and there, currently making my way through a podcast called SCP Archives that do readings of the SCP Foundation.
What's the SCP Foundation? I don't even know what it is.
It's a collaboration of numerous writers. Born out of the era of creepypasta.
Oh, of course.
That's
yes, your side project.
Yeah, but this is nothing to do with me. This is something far more successful. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect. And it refers to a series of records from a shadowy, ominous foundation that's cataloguing some of the most dangerous items that they've taken from the outside world, and they've contained them, protected them, and kept them away from humanity because of the danger they could impose on the world. And it's very sterile. It's very meticulous. It involves experiment logs of different random objects, items, phenomena. And it's very dark, can be very funny, very terrifying at times as well. Even though it's all fiction, it is still a very engaging series to dip in and out of. Each artifact sometimes ties into others. And this podcast reads the archive notes. It's a very interesting way of consuming the media.
Okay.
Yeah, they utilize voice actors and the like as well, so it gives it an extra dimension. That's pretty much what I've been enjoying. How about yourself?
Well, I say a couple of prose fiction novels I've read recently, but I both have similar stories in the sense that they're both written by authors that I'm a big fan of, but they're both authors that are very uneven. I've learned. The first being Stephen Donaldson's Thomas Covenant Chronicles. You ever heard of the Thomas Covenant Chronicles or Stephen Donaldson?
I've heard of the Thomas Covenant Chronicles in passing.
Yes, it's his most famous series. It's a fantasy series that he started in the 70s. I believe he finished it in the last 20 years. It was like 10 volumes or something like that. And it's interesting. I discovered Donaldson by reading The Gap, which is his science fiction saga, which I would put in my favourite series of books. Thomas Covenant, unfortunately, I wouldn't. I think I'm starting to learn that maybe fantasy isn't my favourite genre. I'm not sure. I need to give more fantasy authors a trial, to be honest. Then tell a lie. I read T.H. White's The Once and Future King, which I loved. Absolutely loved it. I devoured that book. But anyway, so it's about Thomas Covenant is an author who is a leper, has leprosy, and he gets transported into an alternative fantasy universe called The Land. And the setup is the setup. For the next 3 books in the first trilogy, it is essentially a series of fantasy tropes. You know, you could call them whatever you want. The one thing I will credit Donaldson is that he has, considering he wrote this in the late 70s, he created his own world rather than following Tolkien's, style guide. So it's all original. Although something that has always amused me is that the main villain is called Lord Foul. And it just makes me think of Lord Shit. Every time I read
It's
it,
a
it
little on the
really
nose,
amuses
isn't it?
me.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. He is on the nose, though, with a lot of his character names. Salt Hand Foam Follower is the name of one of the companions in it, a giant. And like, if you explained it to someone, as I am explaining it to you now, you would probably think that sounds absolutely awful. But it has its own charm. Anyway, what makes the book enjoyable, in my opinion, is Thomas Covenant himself, because he's not your typical fantasy protagonist, because he's from Earth and he gets transported to this alternative universe, and he's a very angry man, full of self-loathing. He has an arc. He's a passive character, a rider, as is often the case in many narratives. The hero is a passive actor and then takes part at the end of the story. But he is an interesting character, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of complaints over the years about how people find it a bit too depressing and a bit too full of loathing. I like a character who's angry and annoyed at the world, personally, because it gives it a bit of colour. Rather than just a hero who's there just to save the day,
an idealist
and just
or
do
something.
whatever.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like Superman and Batman. I like the fact Batman's a bit depressing and a bit annoyed and a bit cynical. It gives him more depth. But that's not to everyone's taste, obviously.
This is true.
And then I started reading book 4 in the second series, and immediately alarm bells were ringing. It is point of another for a potential discussion later on, but at the end of book 3, he kills Lord Foul, and then the story ends and he goes back to Earth. In book 4, Lord Foul is back.
Oh, they pulled an emperor, did they?
Well, this is 50 years ago, but yes, exactly. This is exactly a big problem for me straight away. I actually really enjoyed the opening chapters of the novel, because it was set on Earth and introduced a new Earth character that Thomas Covenant interacts with. And then when he went to the land, and then we find out Lord Foul is still alive, even though the story is set several thousand years after the first book in the land time. So most of the original cast are dead anyway. Immediate alarm bells for me, because that kind of narrative take ruins what came before. Like, what was the point of the struggle in the first place if you're going to just resurrect the villain again and he's going to have a new plan, And it's concerned me, actually, because I know there's 10 books. I'm thinking, well, if I actually bother to read the next 2 books in this second trilogy, is it going to be the same again? I'm just going to get Lord Foul again, and we're going to get another bloody journey for a forest area, because that's basically what the book is, as is the case of a lot of fantasy novels. And yeah, I ended up speed reading it to the end and just stopped. I didn't care. I'm quite annoyed, really, because I was expecting to enjoy it. But then when I went back to my Goodreads account, I went and looked at the rating that I gave the first 3 books, and I gave each one 3 stars out of 5. So what does that say?
It's middle of the road.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's not, because like Thomas Covenant is a good character. The world is fairly interesting. It's just that it does, apart from the fact, as well as the fact he comes from Earth, one of the biggest problems is that it does just follow the fantasy ideas, and that's it. It's just, they are basically cogs in a machine, but they're just labeled differently in the end. And I found it very hard to care, because of the fact that the fantasy tropes, but also because he resurrected Lord Foul. There was a reason for it, but does it matter what the reason is? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can justify it with some kind of giant fictional bunch of reasons. It doesn't matter what it is. The point is that it's the effect on the story, and yeah.
You feel like you're taking a step backwards.
I did, yeah. Well, the story did take a step backwards. You're right, but I did. It forced me to take a step backwards from the novel. I was most disappointed, really, because I like Covenant. Like, Donaldson is notorious for repeating phrases in his work, especially when it comes to similes and adjectives. He likes specific words. Have you ever heard of a semantic field, Mark?
Semantic field?
Yeah, have you ever heard that phrase?
No.
So, interestingly, when I went to college, before I went to university, I was taught about semantic fields, but we did not. I never found the word semantic field once in the entirety of my university degree. Not once did I discover it. So, kudos to my teachers for teaching me about it. A semantic field is, it can be any size, the field, but you can. When I say a field, you've got to imagine a force field, and it's basically how a writer will choose specific words or phrases and repeat them sometimes to create a specific intended atmosphere. They create a semantic field. You could say that like dystopian novels and cyberpunk novels are especially good with semantic fields because they are looking to replicate a certain feel, a certain vibe. So, and Donaldson he does it himself with certain words and phrases, but none are so amusing as some of Thomas Covenant's own personal curses. Like, instead of saying fuck, he says hellfire. It really makes me laugh. So every now and then something will happen and you get hellfire ! Through free indirect speech / discourse. And whenever I read it, I just imagine this character going, hellfire! Like really angry. It gives him personality and gives him character. But it is over the top and silly as well. So, yeah, anyway, long story short, it was a bit of a mishmash, that discussion there about that book. I've also recently given up on Spook Country by William Gibson, which also broke my heart to give up on it because William Gibson is one of my favourite authors as well because he wrote Neuromancer. Very important novel to me. Yeah, very important novel to me and my own writing.
Classic book.
Yeah. Of course, you know.
And not just important to you, important to an entire genre.
We will discuss it at some point. I've read a fair few of his books now. I've read the Sprawl trilogy from Neuromancer. I've read the Bridge trilogy, which is the next series of books he did after. Spook Country is part of the Blue Ant sequence, which is the second book in this current trilogy. And it's, as time goes on, he's becoming less and less cyberpunk, which distresses me. And he's becoming more and more techno thriller-esque. And I don't know, like, the book got a lot of good reviews. It was called a literary thriller. And while it is quite well written, I just couldn't care. I really struggled. The first book, I speed read it in the end because I couldn't tell you anything that happened. And this second book, I don't know what it is. I think, as we were discussing in the previous episode, it's so important to me that the characters leap off the page, that there are really interesting, enticing personal conflicts that are at stake. And I wouldn't say it's cookie cutter because it's a techno thriller, and he is quite a smart writer, very good at weaving multiple intricate threads, which gradually reveal their secrets and come together at the end. He started doing that with Count Zero and then perfected it practically with Monolith's Overdrive, which is book 2 and book 3 of the Sprawl trilogy. But yeah, I'm getting to a point now in my life where if I'm struggling with a book, it's got to be the book's fault, right? You know, it's not me. Nothing personal, obviously, but it means I'm just not enjoying it. Which is exactly the reason why, when I finished this book, I thought I'm going to read something safe, and I'm reading some Michael Moorcock, Elric. The third book in his Elric series. Some would call it the progenitor of The Witcher. But anyway, I won't discuss that now because I'm reading it now. But truth is, I'm enjoying it. I love Michael Moorcock's style and his characters. I love Elric as a character because he's interesting. The world's interesting. You could say it's like a slightly more magical, multiverse-esque version of Conan, to give you a broad picture of what Elric is about. He's got a sword called Stormbringer that steals like the life force of others, but feeds Elric. He was writing these books like, God knows, 60s, 70s, very old series, very, very old series. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that now. Often when I read a book by an author that I don't enjoy, it like depresses me so much that I worry, as I said, is it me? And then I always have to read something I know I'll like afterwards. I think, no, it just means that book wasn't for me, it just wasn't for me. So, and there you go. So, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, Mark is going to lead us in with our discussion of the 2023 movie, The Flash. We'll be right back.
Okay, so welcome back to the podcast, and now we're leading into the next segment where we're going to be discussing The Flash, the latest release from DC Universe, and everything that led up to that. So, I myself am a fan of DC Comics in general, and I do have a particular love for comic book movies, despite the fact that in recent years they have started to stagnate a touch compared to what I suppose at some point in the future we'll be referring to as the golden age of cinematic comic book movies. To that end, I wanted to first discuss the road that led us to The Flash, this most recent era of DC comic movies, starting from The Man of Steel. Now, you've seen The Man of Steel, haven't you, Gav?
Yes, right at the cinema.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah?
I mean, I consider it to be a good movie in some regards. For what it was and for what it set up next, Henry Cavill as Superman was a very good choice.
If you ask me, the cast is excellent, but the film is a mess.
Oh, absolutely. In that regard, where you're referring to the fact that by the end they are literally annihilating an entire city. It's barely a win.
It's just the general flow of the film. I mean, like, I could probably discuss my dislike for Christopher Nolan these days on a podcast. But the truth is that while with some of his later films he has struggled to control the spiraling narratives that he is attempting to put on screen, someone else trying to do his style of, filmmaking, no. I admire Zack Snyder's visual eye, but he just replicating the tone and the narrative arcs and feel of the Nolan Batman films was not what he should have done, in my opinion.
He should have tried to make it his own.
Yes, that was the biggest problem with Man of Steel. Obviously, it was a brand new universe, and new cast was going to be a new Batman eventually, as we know. But it was very clear when you watched that film. I'm pretty sure the story was by David S. Goyer as well, that and the Nolans produced it. That because the Dark Knight trilogy made so much money, Warner Brothers wanted their DC expanded universe to at least follow on from the tone of those movies. And while in some regards that may have been wise, because they wouldn't have been copying Marvel's style. Again, as I said, Zack Snyder was not the one to do it. He should have done it his own way. You look at 300 and Watchmen; those are Zack Snyder movies, aren't they?
Oh, very stylized.
Yes. Whereas I can't. Can you say the same of Man of Steel?
No.
Exactly. Anyway, sorry.
No, okay. No way.
You asked, man. You asked.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's exactly why I asked, because I do want to hear your opinion. Okay, so Man of Steel was the start of the modern era of DC cinema, which led straight into Batman versus Superman.
Oh.
Which, yeah.
Oh, dear.
I mean, there are elements. I mean, very, very small elements of that movie that I do like. Literal couples of minutes in here, there, which I enjoyed.
Did you enjoy Martha?
I very much did not. I mean, one of the things I took away from that movie, because I do try and see the good in a bad movie, is the fight sequence towards the end, where Batman is full on fighting like he does in Arkham City games, wherein he's somersaulting, he's using weapons.
Yeah.
That sort of style, that's the Batman that you want to see on the big screen.
We had never seen Batman like that in a live action movie. It was like, in terms of visuals, which is where Zack Snyder is at his best, it was incredible. If I was to give you a critique quickly of the Nolan films, is that the fight sequences are weak. I don't think Nolan knew how to film fight sequences. Camera shots far too close. You can't see what's going on. I would say that the fight scenes in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman are superior to the fight scenes in the Nolan films. And Michael Keaton was a much smaller man. I don't know how much training he did, but didn't Christian Bale do training? I don't know.
Absolutely, he bulked up in
he bulked
everything.
up, definitely. But yeah, anyway, yes.
But the thing about the Nolan movies is, if I had to be honest, there's only one notable fight sequence I can really think of from those 3 movies, and that would be the Bane Batman fight scene. And it's okay. It's for what it is and what it sets out to achieve, but it's not distinctive. It doesn't really showcase what Batman's capable of.
Agreed.
But moving on from Batman and Superman rather quickly, we come next to the Suicide Squad.
I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the first.
You enjoyed the first Suicide Squad?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, you sound surprised, right? You sound surprised.
I had difficulty with that movie.
Yeah. So let me tell you something very quickly, right? When I saw it, it had the same problems of Man of Steel. It was doing the same thing as the previous films. It was overcomplicated. It was overly serious, although funnier than the previous films. And the narrative just didn't hold up because it was very messy. But I thought the cast were excellent.
I will agree with you there. I mean, they were all distinctive enough. I mean, even the lesser characters like Jai Courtney.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much established Margot Robbie as the current Harley Quinn.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
Simple as that. She made that character on screen. I know we're going to get something even more interesting coming up with the Joker sequel soon, but I even quite liked Jared Leto's Joker because it was different.
He tried. He certainly tried, and he tried to find a new angle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was how much of it was him. You just don't know. It could
how much was direction.
The direction. You know what I mean? But in the end, this was not long after Heath Ledger, and the one thing you can't do is copy Heath Ledger.
Lightning in a bottle with that one.
Exactly. So I think it was actually very smart they went somewhere completely different. I just think that people at the time, viewers at the time, fans at the time, were just not ready for something that different because he was really different. And they just, reacted with revulsion, which I think was unfair.
Also, Leto is a bit of a polarizing character in and of himself.
Unfortunately, I don't really care too much, really. As you will learn soon enough. For the most part, I do tend to separate the actor from the artist. For the most part. But you remember Will Smith was in that film, man.
Yeah, and he was. I mean, at the end of the day, I like Will Smith when he plays Will Smith. It's always entertaining when he's being himself. Oh, what I mean in terms of that definitive character that he kind of from Bad Boys and from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that kind of slightly wisecracking. It's like becoming gruffer with age at this point. And this is just another version of that, really.
Yeah.
So he was a perfectly serviceable Deadshot.
Was this film post Guardians of the Galaxy, post James Gunn? Was it trying to replicate like the James Gunn humor in DC? I feel like I want to say it was.
Yeah.
Which was obviously to its detriment because it made the film kind of look like, a poor copy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But like I said, I think the film is more than some of its parts, actually. I think it's fine. It's just, there's some really funny moments in it.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next one, we have, this is what I think will be regarded as one of the greats of this entire series of movies, and that would be Wonder Woman, the first one.
Wonder Woman, so soon.
Yeah. And I like that movie. I really did. And not just because I thought Chris Pine was awesome and Gal Gadot was perfect. I thought the chemistry between the two of them was brilliant. And
yes.
It was just scenes that if you described them to me on paper, would sound too much. However, when they're played out in the right tone, with the right music, with the right slow motion, actually lead to some downright epic moments. The sequence where she walks out to No Man's Land, for instance, is... Yeah, I mean, if you describe that to someone, it would sound almost absurd. Good. However, it's fantastic.
I think something that's really impressive about Gal Gadot in that film is that she is not, a wrestler. While she certainly didn't look unfit, she didn't look like someone who worked out crazy for the part either. Maybe she did, but obviously she wasn't like super muscular, let's say. And
No, she keeps in shape. So
yeah. I think that her Wonder Woman was incredibly feminine, incredibly beautiful, but also incredibly powerful. And I think that's really impressive that she managed to capture all of that in one go. You know,
she was also had a certain self-assured confidence.
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's part of her power. You look at any screenshot of her in that film, and okay, yeah, she is incredibly beautiful in that costume as well. But I don't know. I just believe she could kick ass, man. My God, she could kick ass, and she looks great kicking ass in that film. Not in terms of, beauty, but I believed. She embodied that character. Absolutely embodied it. And her and Chris Pine were fantastic as well. I am a big fan of Chris Pine.
He's got a charm that
you
can't really measure. It's just
my one critique of that film is the villain.
Yes, I will be honest. There was something almost ludicrous about seeing Ares' head on that giant suit of armor at the end, which it just didn't look right.
It wasn't presented as well as it could be.
The movie peaked halfway through, unfortunately.
I agree.
That is the one thing that you can really criticize it for. And the final sequence fighting on that in that airport was just, it left little impression compared to the prior action sequences.
Mm-hmm.
But she's got a badass theme tune. The
theme, the theme is good.
The guitars and
it's good. Hans Zimmer, I mean, by this point, he'd done the soundtrack to Batman vs Superman, which is where he first used his Wonder Woman theme, and the music in that film is quite boring.
Yeah, but it suddenly wakes up when her riff kicks in.
That's right. I mean, like when Batman and Superman are fighting, it just sounds like, when there is fighting and Batman is involved, it just sounds like Batman music. Listen, I just want to say, I do actually really like the Superman theme by Hans Zimmer. Actually, I think it's very effective. It really captures like a certain sense of wonder and empowerment and passion that suits the character. Nobility suits the character very well. Anyway.
And next we lead into Justice League. I love a good ensemble movie, I will be honest. I mean, it's one of the things that I did like about Suicide Squad. And this was just on a bigger scale in terms of bringing together all of these figureheads of the DC universe specifically into a movie. And it's difficult to discuss the Justice League without making reference to the Snyder Cut. I mean, that in itself was something that people didn't even think existed a couple of years ago, and then it became...
I haven't seen it yet, to be honest with you, which is really... I need to get around to that.
It is something that's worth watching.
Yeah.
It does change the movie. It gives certain characters more time. I mean, Cyborg is not quite an afterthought, but he certainly is, let's say, stripped down.
Yes.
In the cut for the original Justice League release.
The biggest problem with the Justice League series of films, the films leading up to it in general, was that they moved too quickly anyway. They didn't give the characters enough time to breathe. We got Batman versus Superman and Doomsday, and then the Justice League within like 4 films.
Yeah.
There should have been a Cyborg film and an Aquaman film before and a Flash film before the Justice League, at least.
And at this point, we're already dealing with the resurrection of Superman.
Exactly. Yeah, they did it far too quickly. Quickly. But despite the fact that like the Justice League is not the film it was originally intended to be, because Joss Whedon came and finished it, didn't he? I kind of liked it, man. I'm at this point now with superhero movies where they're just all the same to me. In the end, I think I might have said the same thing about Transformers. Like, the CGI was a bit ropey, but finding somewhere for Batman to exist in the Justice League in a film is difficult. They succeed in the comics because of all of the what would you call it, context around his position. He's so smart that he could defeat anyone with a week to prepare, etc., etc., etc. That's how they get away with it in that. And
he gets treated with a certain reverence by every other member of the Justice League.
Exactly. It's like, they almost fear.
Monitor duty.
Yeah, exactly. They almost fear him. Like, don't upset him because he'll be right now. But in a week's time, he'll be gone.
He'll remember.
Exactly. And like capturing that and balancing his human qualities as in the sense that he's not superhuman, apart from his wallet. Is difficult, and I think the character struggled in the film actually. But
Affleck certainly tried.
He's very.
He is a good Batman.
We'll discuss that soon, I'm sure. But I enjoyed the Danny Elfman soundtrack though. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Needs to go back and listen to that again.
This is the movie which introduced us to our main protagonist today, which would be Ezra Miller's Flash.
Yes.
Now, the thing is, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good comic relief, but I wasn't a great fan of Ezra Miller in Justice League. Having read a significant amount of Flash comics in the past, I felt that the character was a strong departure from who Barry Allen was. They made him much more socially awkward. They made him. The wisecracks, to a degree, that does fit. But they changed a lot of the character in order to make him more of a comic relief, which he is the comic relief in the comics as well, along with Green Lantern, most often.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, I had some difficulty with the Flash in Justice League.
Well, we'll discuss Ezra Miller more once we get to the Flash movie.
Okay, shifting into next was the release of Aquaman not long after this, which I feel may have occurred the wrong way round.
I haven't seen it, and I have no interest in seeing it. Jason Momoa, I think, is overrated. So overrated. I'm sure he's a lovely fellow. Probably very funny as well in real life. But after seeing Conan as well, which is one of the few films I've ever watched where I've actually had to stop it halfway through because I hated it so much. I just can't. I'm just not a fan. I'm just not a fan of him, and just have no interest of watching the Aquaman films.
That's fair enough. I mean, the Aquaman movie itself it left a little impression on me. I mean, I'm not going to say it was bad. It wasn't bad. It just was, and that was literally it. I feel that it's a movie that should have been made before Justice League acted as an introduction of the character.
Yes.
And then maybe it would have meant something more, but this was a very, very poor outing. Now, the next couple of movies, I think we are going to move through at high speed because they're ones that you most certainly have not seen, because they're a bit more of the fringe movies. Next would be Shazam, for instance.
Oh, I really wanted to see it, actually. I saw the trailers and I thought it looks great. Just haven't got around to it yet.
It's a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. Terrible research for a podcast, eh? I've not watched the film. Yeah, I do want to see it. Really want to see it.
I did genuinely enjoy it. It's a very funny movie. Mark Strong as the villain is actually brilliant. I like Mark Strong. And I encourage, man, honestly. I'm not going to say too much here, but make a point of it. I think you'll enjoy the first one. Next would be Birds of Prey, the next outing for Harley Quinn.
Oh, I didn't see that, no.
Now, that was... I feel Margot Robbie started to lean more into Deadpool / Captain Jack Sparrow at that point. Which I get. She's trying to find the right tone for her character, and
or is it the direction though? You never know. You never know. I mean, she might have investment into the character. Who knows? She might have, money. Who knows? But you can't always just blame the actor.
Ewan McGregor. It's in his first outing as Black Mask.
Oh God, I forgot he was in that. I love Black Mask as well. Oh
yeah, a character that I feel hasn't been done well yet. I mean,
I think apart from the swerve, it was in Batman Arkham City. It was really good. Was it Arkham City?
Yeah.
No, or was it
Arkham Origins?
Origins, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, he was in a DC animated cartoon where he was really well done.
Yeah. Oh, which one was that?
I can't remember. Anyway.
Yeah, and he is a character that I'd love to see more of, just generally represented in the Batman universe, because I've always found him interesting in the comics.
Yes, a great costume, great design.
Exactly.
For just a gangster, but yeah.
Okay, next would be Wonder Woman 84.
I didn't see it. The reviews put me off.
No, I'm not surprised. That movie was... Yeah, that somewhat upset me, I will be honest. I mean,
really?
I appreciate that they want to find a way to get Chris Pine and Gal Gadot back together on the big screen, but was that really the only way they could think of to do it?
Really? Oh dear.
The story is paper thin. It really doesn't make any effort other than to move it from set piece to set piece. And
let me tell you something that's quite worrying about that movie, right? Not only is it directed by Patty Jenkins again, but she's also, this time, on the writing team. which she wasn't in the first film. Also, Jeff Johns. I mean, is that because it was
Really?
based on
Jeff
some
Johns?
comics that Jeff Johns had something to do with? I don't know, but
No, it's just a marked decline by comparison to the previous.
it is a shame. I said I was actually really looking forward to it, and the reviews came out, and for the most part, I do try to not pay too much attention to reviews. But when a film, the character Gal Gadot was universally loved in that first film, and whether or not it was, down to
It
her
was
or not.
critically panned across the
Yeah,
board.
it was. The second film was. Yeah, I was sad. I was very sad, and I still haven't seen it. And
I mean, I still think she's still got enough momentum in the engine for another outing as Wonder Woman in a movie, solo movie. But I do feel they need to take some lessons from the second one.
Yes.
Next, we'll be going on to the second outing for the Suicide Squad.
I enjoyed.
I did enjoy as well. I mean, this is James Gunn right here, and
I think James Gunn is overrated personally, and always have done. I think
if you're going for something light, if you're not going for anything too heavy, it can just be a fun cinema watch.
I think he is style over substance, and I think his style is so heavy-handed and in your face, it annoys me. Just always thought that. Always.
Did you find that from the Guardians movies as well?
Yes, that's specifically what it is. And I hated how when they were bringing him across to do Suicide Squad 2, there was all that behind-the-scenes drama about he was being critical of Marvel, wasn't it? And it's like DC were like, yeah, we're bringing Marvel's A guy, and he's going to bring his style over to us, and we're going to be amazing because we got him. And I was just thinking, this guy's just, I don't know. I think he's overrated. Saying that, the movie's fine. I enjoyed the movie, and it gave us Peacemaker. It gave us John Cena as Peacemaker.
That's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I've watched the TV show of Peacemaker, and
it's fantastic.
It's so entertaining. That man knows comedy.
What's really amazing, right? Flashback, say, to the era of ruthless aggression, the 2000s of WWE, when John Cena was just coming in, and then when he became the wrestling Jesus, and we all hated him, right? Can you imagine, like, flashing forwards in 20 years and going and revealing that you're actually a big fan of John Cena now?
Yeah,
I never would have believed it, but I don't know. Since Bumblebee, especially, I just really enjoy him in movies. I just really do.
Yeah, he's a very entertaining person to watch.
Yeah.
And the thing about John Cena is he's not afraid to be the butt of a joke, which is something I feel he may have learned from The Rock in that regard.
Yes, I think you can almost always tell that he's having fun. Just something about him that you just think, you're loving this and you're enjoying it, and it makes me enjoy you doing it.
Yeah. And the things I hear about him from behind the scenes, I mean, there is a mixture of different stories right now in terms of what sort of person he is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his Make-A-Wish Foundation work is legendary.
Yes.
So, yeah, as I say, that was a good movie on my part. I did enjoy that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And although it was rather notable, the recasting of Will Smith into it.
Well, Idris Elba played a different character, didn't he? But yeah, basically was the same.
Essentially, he was another version of Deadshot. There was, I mean, they'd found another character that was similar to Deadshot, but not the same.
Shame,
you
really.
can see where they could insert Deadshot into that.
Will Smith was missed, but Idris Elba's fine.
Okay, then we get on to Black Adam.
Oh dear, I didn't see this one.
This was a movie that happened.
You watched it?
Yeah.
I can't believe you watched it. The film was panned. There was all that promotion about how passionate The Rock was about bringing something great. And I like Black Adam as a character, and the potential Black Adam Shazam later on. But
he's an interesting character in the comics, because he's a flawed character, and sometimes they're the most fun to watch.
But what happened?
Good question. I mean, the story itself is just it's one of those stories where you watch it, things happen, and you find that you're not really feeling any tension or build up in the story. You're just watching it move from piece to piece. Characters are brought in, characters move out, and that's it. It's just,
and you don't care. Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate as well. I mean, that is golden.
You would have thought.
How could they mess it up?
There was just no sort of
conflict. No conflict. Right? No real conflict.
And the conflict they did insert was very cheap. It was very manufactured. It didn't feel organic to the story.
Was it like a Deus Ex Machina or object or something? Was it something
As is often the case, yes.
Yeah, nothing really character based to
No,
draw the
I
film.
mean, yeah, which was disappointing because I went in ready to like that movie.
I wanted to like it, yeah. When I heard that The Rock was cast as Black Adam, from that very moment, though, I was concerned. Because The Rock is, as much as I love The Rock, he is The Rock. And I don't think he can disappear into a character.
Now, the only characters he seems to play well are ones that are original, in terms of characters of which you can tell they've made the character in mind of the fact that The Rock is going to play them.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
As opposed to a pre-existing license or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved him in the Jumanji movies.
Really? I'm not saying
opposite Kevin Hart. Him and Kevin Hart, you can tell that those two are friends.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of chemistry they have on screen, along with Jack Black as well, he ties in well.
I don't like Jack Black.
Oh, I will be honest, I've always been a secret Jack Black fan.
No, I am not a Jack Black guy. Never have been. I liked him in one movie, and that's it. And that was King Kong.
In actual fact, one of his more understated roles, to be honest.
That's right. That's probably the reason why I liked him. That's probably the reason why I liked him in it. I actually tell a lie. There's now. I was about to say yes. There's now 2 movies. Yeah, because he was superb as Bowser in the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
And they let him sing.
Oh, it's fantastic. It was very good. It was very, very good. Anyway, sorry, next.
Yep. And then we come to Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods.
Oh.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's more the same. It's a movie that happened again. I do feel that sometimes when they move into these sequels, these movies, such as Wonder Woman and Shazam, when the first movie comes out, there's a lot less of the executive meddling that comes from the higher-ups. I feel that are worried about this movie tying into later movies. And as a result, the directors are given a little bit more free rein to tell a story. So the first outings of these movies is usually pretty good. Then, once they start to see some sort of success, aside from the main run of the likes of Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, I do feel that more gets passed down from the higher-ups of what they want in their movies in terms of how they want it to be directed going forwards and where it's going to be going for future movies. And sometimes that can have a detrimental effect on the story.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate because you can clearly see which movies have been affected by studio mandate and which ones have been allowed a little bit more free rein to do their own thing. Now, after covering all of that in what I was hoping was going to be a brief quick fire, but apparently wasn't, we come to The Flash. Now, The Flash is a movie that I have mixed feelings about. I enjoyed parts of it. However, I am not a huge fan of Ezra Miller's Flash, and unfortunately that apparently is a major aspect of this movie.
Definitely. I would say that if you're not into him and his style, whether or not that's him being directed or not, yes. Because, yes.
There is a lot of him in this movie, and there's a lot of him being the comic relief.
Yes.
At times, in more than once in the same scene, especially when he's acting opposite himself. Mm-hmm. The thing is that in small doses, he is perfectly fine when he's balanced out against other characters. I found him okay in Justice League. It wasn't to my taste. That was fine. And I tried to judge this movie without having any personal opinions of Ezra Miller, who I'm not really a greatest fan of outside of the movie itself, but I do try not to let that colour my opinion. It can be a touch tricky at times. But I find him, when he's a comic relief, he works best when he's balancing off a straight man of a foil. And there are scenes early on where when he's interacting with Batman, that's like with Affleck's Batman anyway, when he's a little bit more tempered. But when he's by himself, he kind of turns it up to 11, and I don't find that enjoyable. How did you feel about Ezra Miller?
Well, I like him. This is where we differed. When I first watched the film, and I told you this, you went, "Oh, Gav rant incoming," didn't you? You were waiting for it.
That was my expectation of it. I will be honest.
You thought I was going to hate it, but I turned around and said, "Do you know what? I loved it. I really, really enjoyed this film." Me and DC and me and the Flash, we do go back. But I'm not as well versed as you by far, obviously. But the Flash is a character that I've always had a certain amount of admiration and for, and I've always enjoyed. Post Tim Burton's Batman in 1989, there was the Flash TV series, wasn't there? Did you ever see that?
I've seen reviews on YouTube of the
Yes.
show, but I myself never actually watched it.
They rearranged the episodes into a movie and rented them, and I really enjoyed them. I mean, I was young. This has got to be 1990, so I was 7. But they were fine, and I greatly appreciated Danny Elfman's The Flash theme. The soundtrack to the series itself was composed by his foil, Shirley Walker, who conducted a lot of his orchestras, but also did the main music to the Batman animated TV series. And I just have very fond memories of it. Watching it when I was very young and enjoying it, and thinking the Flash was really cool. Because let's be honest, the costume looks amazing. For the actual Red costume in the comics.
It's always been an iconic.
Oh, it's a fantastic costume, and I thought they pulled the costume off really well in this film. And the story was quite good as well. I remember him getting that. They followed more or less the origin story of Barry Allen to the T. He was for the police, and he's a
forensic scientist.
That's right. He gets electrocuted. Blah 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 blah, and stuff. And I always thought it was really cool. I had a Flash action figure as well. So I just having an action figure of a character means that you have some kind of
connection with
them as a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been a fan. And seeing him in the cartoons, the odd comics that I've read here and there, I've always enjoyed him. Also, of course, Mark Hamill being in the Flash TV series as well.
That's the trickster. Yeah,
that's the trickster. Fantastic. So what I'm trying to say is that I've always been quite partial to the Flash, and I recognise that Ezra Miller's. I'm not going to say take, because, like I said, how much of it is him? Who knows? I've not seen that other film he was really good in, unfortunately. I don't know what it's called. But the Ezra Miller in the Flash movie, these DC movies, is nothing like Barry Allen in the comics at all.
No.
They're replicating the Marvel humor, aren't they? But turned up to 11. The Flash runs fast, so he thinks really fast and talks really fast and is funny really fast. And I think that there's a certain amount of fatigue for that kind of humor, especially when it's done by DC, because it's very obvious they're just copying Marvel. Because do you not think that as DC movies have gone on, they've started to try to be funnier and funnier and funnier?
Well, they see a system that works and they're hoping to emulate it, but try and make it their own at the same time. Which the problem is, it's such a simple concept. It's very transparent when it's being utilized elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. But I said, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because he's almost playing the Flash like an autistic kid. I like him. I liked him in Justice League, but as you said, he was only in it sparingly as a foil, as a bit
to give levity to scenes where heavier stuff was happening.
Exactly. I mean, the idea of a young boy having superpowers and whatever.
It's a story that's been told 100 times.
It has,
It is a story that resonates with me because I always loved that story.
Of course.
The original Peter Parker, so to speak.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're an old hand of comics, you've seen it before. There's something original about it. So, as I was just stating, I'm fine with Ezra Miller in this film. So, immediately, from the beginning, I'm on a more positive outlook than you are.
Yeah. I mean, I came in with not a negative perspective, but one where I was hesitant to accept him as easily.
He's not your Barry Allen in the end.
No, but there is certainly a character that is mine in this.
Yes.
And I pretty much came for Michael Keaton. That's pretty much the thing that attracted me to this movie. This is what brought me and put my ass in that seat.
I think I have to say, sorry to interject, with Ezra Miller playing up in the public eye, I think it became quite obvious they were re-promoting the film as a Batman film rather than a Flash movie.
There was a certain redressing that occurred during.
Yeah, but why not? Because everyone wanted to see Keaton.
Yes,
myself included.
Thing is, they have hinged a significant portion of the DC universe on Ezra now, and as a result, actions that may have got a lesser actor recast by this point, they are trying to minimize the damage on and hoping that they can continue to utilize him going forward. So,
are they going to keep using him? Is James Gunn going to keep using him?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, he is surrounded by controversy.
Yes.
And it has led to significant damage control on DC Studios' part in terms of shifting the priority and the focus of this movie. I mean, he is still the main character. However, they did lean into a lot of the other characters in order to try and spread who the story was about. But essentially, it is The Flash. That's literally the name on the title. So, to that end, we're introduced in The Flash to Barry Allen, who is now settling firmly into being a hero and is drawn to a crisis in Gotham, wherein he has to go assist Batman, who is trying to stop the hijacking of some very dangerous diseases by one of the son of the Falcones, I believe it was. And this leads to initially one of my first reservations when I was watching this movie. It's that first action sequence. It's the one with the hospital where he's bouncing through the air, he's juggling babies, he's catching them all in a very cartoonish fashion. I don't know, that sequence rubbed me the wrong way. Fortunately, it was bookended by Batman road skiing on behind a Jeep or a Humvee even.
As always, Ben Affleck's Batman is just fantastic on screen.
Absolutely.
In costume.
There is something immensely cool about driving a motorcycle off of a plane as well. I don't know why. It just looks cool to me. And I did see a lot of the promotion and a lot of the interviews around this saying that the effects were purposely given a certain plastic quality in order to show and represent the idea of how light wavelengths move at super speed. And I feel that is just lampshade hanging, trying to cover up the fact that maybe the effects weren't as nice as they could have made them.
Yes, even though the film was delayed, wasn't it? Quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
It amazes me that the effects were that bad. I get the impression that DC / Warner Brothers were just seeing the film as dead weight by that point.
Yeah.
And just thinking, well, let's just release it as it is without any more polish and whatever money.
Yeah, try and get it to a watchable level.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah.
So I was not a great fan of that first sequence with the babies. I mean, I could see that it was meant to show some sort of level of comedy, but there were just little elements. Like, for instance, he's got a suit with a readout that tells him how high his energy levels are.
Yeah.
Things like that.
I liked that sequence. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
It was over the top.
Very much so. But nonetheless, I did like to see Jeremy Irons in that scene as well. He's always fun.
Yes, I like Jeremy Irons, Alfred a lot.
He's another character that's managed to bring his own to a character that's been well established.
Yes.
And has been defined in some cases.
Yes.
By very good actors in the past, yet he has managed to find a way in which to bring a new spin to it.
Yes.
And then we start to move forwards from that point, wherein Barry Allen starts to realise he has the potential to travel through time due to the speed at which he can run. Now, let's just stop a moment and just discuss the fact of how he runs.
Yes, it does look a bit odd.
I've said this to you before, but he looks like a speed skater. It doesn't look right. I mean, I know that you can't just have him running normally and just fast forward it to Benny Hill levels, because then it would just look stupid. But this level doesn't work for me either. I've seen sort of speedsters done in cinema before. I mean, Quicksilver in Days of Future Past.
Yes, just to say yes. Yes.
That was a phenomenal speedster sequence. That one where he beats up that series of security guards in the kitchen in the government building. I still consider that to be one of the best sequences in X-Men history.
Oh, Bryan Singer has been known to have very good action sequences.
Yes,
not always, but a lot of the films his films do have good action sequences, like Nightcrawler.
Absolutely. I mean, it's still
fantastic.
Pisses me off. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit angry here, but it pisses me off that X-Men 2 started with Nightcrawler doing quite possibly one of the best sequences we'd ever seen up until that point in a comic book movie. And then they never did anything like it again for the rest of the movie.
Oh, I like X-Men 2, though. I think it's a good film, man.
Don't get me wrong, X-Men 2 is a good movie.
The Wolverine fight with Deathstrike at the end was different character.
Yeah,
I thought
that
it
was good.
Very good.
But why would they tease us with a Nightcrawler fight sequence like that at the beginning and not pay off with an even better one later on in the movie?
You are right.
It's like an unfired Chekhov's gun. You've given the impression that this character is capable of fighting in a fashion that you haven't seen before, and you want to see more of it, and it just doesn't deliver. I don't know. I just feel that was a wasted opportunity in that movie. But nonetheless, those sort of fight sequences, and getting back to the Quicksilver sequences, have shown that speedsters can be represented well on the silver screen. And I do feel that there are parts of this that could have benefited from not copying notes, but maybe seeing what's been done in the past and utilizing it more in this one, rather than the strange gliding effect that they decide to go with.
Yes, he's like sliding around, isn't he? Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. That didn't really ring true for me. But nonetheless, leading into the fact that this movie does introduce us to, or reintroduces us to, Michael Keaton's Batman. And yeah, I really liked Michael Keaton in this movie. Yeah. There are aspects which you could absolutely say are trailer bait, that are designed purely just to be played in the trailer so everyone go, oh my God, he said the thing.
I wasn't a fan of the shoehorning of Easter egg nostalgia lines at all. It's clearly there, so people go, yes, yeah, boy. But I mean, like, why would Batman say, let's get nuts? Why would he say that in that context? It was terrible. He says, let's get nuts in 1989 Batman to Jack Nicholson's Joker, because he's acting insane on purpose, trying to get him to shoot him because he has the metal plate underneath his suit, doesn't he? Yes. He is pretending to be someone else.
He's goading him.
Exactly. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. And then, I don't know, the way he's just standing there, just, let's get nuts. Just, I don't know. That line really didn't work for me. Really didn't. As did when he said pass the salt. I was like, oh, come on. Come on. I don't know.
They're callbacks, but not maybe ham-fisted in their
They were extremely heavy-handed. However, the line about weight was great because that was a good reference because it contextually made sense. How much do you weigh? That was very good. Anyway. Sorry.
I will say that his introduction with the fight sequence in the kitchen was quite entertaining, even if at that point we had two Flashes to deal with. One of who is close to insufferable, I'm going to be honest, in terms of his annoyance. But
I liked the arc of there being two Barry Allens, though.
I will be honest, once the insufferable one turned up, I actually found myself liking the other one more.
Yes, because one was turned up to 11. But there was a really good story arc there, though, for the character.
Yeah.
Because while Barry Allen at the start of the movie is his insufferable self, when he meets a Barry Allen that's younger and even more insufferable and annoying, it creates a sense of maturity in him. And over the course of the movie, he learns and goes through a good character arc. It's well written and well thought out. And, this is an arc that is not even in the comics. It was added. And I think that's smart writing.
It gives an opportunity to have self-reflection.
Yes.
And it's a new way of demonstrating a self-reflection story.
I wouldn't say it's new. I'm sure it's been done before. But at the same time, like, in the context of this movie, I think it's very smart, just in the same way as how they had Michael Keaton's Batman in this film. I mean, obviously, Michael Keaton's Batman, the 1989 Batman, is in the same universe as General Zod's Batman. Well, the rearranged General Zod, Michael. What's his name? Michael Sarah? Is that what his name is? Oh, it's Michael Shannon, isn't it? Michael Shannon, right?
Michael Shannon, yes. I do like his Zod.
He's very good. Yeah, he's good.
I mean, Terrence Stamp is the definitive Zod.
It's different, though, let's be honest.
And this guy went totally in a different direction with it. And I will say there is something about he can do crazy really well.
Yeah, right? He's got the eyes, hasn't he?
Yes, he does. And he can do crazy quiet or he can do crazy loud. And he can snap between them in a quarter second. And he's one element I loved about Man of Steel.
As I was saying, is that in the Flashpoint comic, it's the part of Batman in the narrative is Thomas Wayne, isn't it? It's the flip story is, what if it was Bruce who was killed and we got Thomas Wayne as Batman instead? I mean, while that concept is really, really cool, I asked you the other day, what would you have preferred? the concept of Thomas Wayne as Batman or Michael Keaton? And you did say Michael Keaton. I said, you said, I'm glad I got to see Michael Keaton. And while I do agree with you, I think what it should be noted that it was very smart on the writers to look at the source material and think, how can we make this our own? How can we make this, a great story that people will want to see on the big screen? What opportunities does it present us in the realm of adaptation? And picking Michael Keaton was an absolute banger of a choice, giving us all the chance to see him again. Admittedly, we all know Michael Keaton was a bit short to be Batman, and that in certain shots in the original films, he looks like a mini Batman. And there were certain shots in this film when he looks like a mini Batman as well. But seeing him replicate the fighting style of the 89 movie, but turned up to 11 with today's effects, was phenomenal.
Oh, that in that government base where he was flinging out the multiple batarangs.
Oh, it's so good.
Gliding down.
God. Oh,
very, very much marked out on that point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. He had like a costume where he couldn't move his head as well, so he was doing the
shoulder tilts and everything.
That's it, yeah.
Always fun, yeah.
But if you ask me, actually, like his best scene in the film was actually out of the costume. When he was sat talking to Barry Allen in the Batcave, is very moving, very, very moving.
I did enjoy the interactions between the characters on that level.
They were good, yeah, they were good.
And then this leads us to the new Supergirl that was introduced in the story as well, which is a character that I'd very much like to see more of. I will be honest, she played it well.
It's interesting. She didn't do much. There were rumors that she and this is a spoiler cast. It always is a spoiler cast. So in the end, in this film, the film that you watched, Batman dies. Michael Keaton's Batman dies. Supergirl dies. They are both killed, and they are dead, as far as we know. And what I'm saying to you is that apparently, before the stinger that we got in the credits, it was going to be Michael Keaton getting out of the car, and that he was alive.
I was not aware of that.
Yes. And Supergirl was going to be alive. They were both going to be alive still.
Intriguing idea.
What do you prefer? Them dead or alive?
I feel that keeping them alive might suggest they might get utilised more in the future, and I don't think that would be necessarily a good thing for Michael Keaton's part. I think that this outing for him was a great send-off to his character, but I feel if they were to do any more than this, it would start to dilute. It's been long enough that they could do one final, as you say, hurrah, but I don't think this should be the start of a new run of Keaton as Batman. I think he did everything he set out to do in this movie. He achieved it.
Yes, because what I want to remind you of is that despite what the moguls may want you to believe, this is not a Michael Keaton movie or a Batman movie, and this is not a Supergirl movie, it's a Flash movie.
Yes.
Isn't it? And I think, well, at the time, and when they killed Batman, I was like, what? They just got him back. And you've killed him already. And then they killed Supergirl. But these deaths contribute to Barry Allen's character arc, don't they? Because he tries even harder to go back in time. Let's talk about the point of this movie, because in comparison to the Flashpoint comic, Barry Allen just wakes up in this alternative universe, doesn't he? He doesn't even know why he's there. It's not until later on that he learns that it was he who tried to save his mother, wasn't it? Am I right?
Yes, he is the source of.
And he's forgotten. He's forgotten it. He's forgotten.
He believes the changes are responsible to blame on the Reverse Flash,
on Professor Zoom. Correct. And the twist in the story in the comic book is that eventually he realizes that it was he who did it, and he has to come to that realization at some point in this narrative, doesn't he? Because then he's got to revert everything back to normal.
Yeah, it's all about learning acceptance.
Exactly. Because what they do differently in this film is that he tries to revert his mother dying and his father being in prison at the beginning of the movie. You see this happen. You know that's why he does this, and this is what causes him to walk into his alternative version. And I think that the deaths of Superman and Batman work really well in giving him this character arc. They make him realize, because he tries to save them, doesn't he, multiple times, and every time they die.
And that's what hammers home the point to him.
Yes.
That you sometimes have to accept that these are the way things are.
That's right. But then there's also that great idea they came up with in this story, in this adaptation, because obviously the villain in the original comic is Professor Zoom, effectively. But I mean, I guess straight away, because I read enough books to realize it. Halfway through this film, or earlier in the film, when the Flash first reverts time, you see like a monstrous entity, don't you?
Yeah, a dark Flash, so to speak.
And you're like, I thought that's a dark Flash, definitely. And I thought it was actually really smart how the older, mature Barry Allen is the one that they both try to turn back time and rescue them. They fail, and it's the older, mature Barry Allen that realizes this is how it has to be. But the younger, more impulsive Barry Allen says, no, it must not be. I must change this, because he hasn't had the growth that the other Barry Allen has had.
And he watches it twist and devour him.
That's correct. And he's not just had, he has lacks the development that Barry Allen has had in the other movies, because he's so much younger and he didn't have his powers at the beginning, but also the growth of Barry Allen seeing his impulsive younger self and re-experiencing Batman and Superman and this world with his maturing perspective, let's say. And I thought it was very cool and very smart how they looked at these characters, and the younger, immature Barry Allen would go crazy and would do everything he can. He would change the entire world just for his mother, for Batman, for Superman, for his friends, and then it turns him into that monster that we get at the end. And while the giant showdown wasn't anything to write home about, I thought it was poignant and well done enough. I thought it was good. And this is what I mean when earlier on I was saying to you that I thought it was a good movie. I was moved by this movie, man. It moved me. I cried a little bit towards the end. I was like, because the story, I mean, realizing that everyone has to die, you can't change this. It's been done before. Okay, fine, But I thought the way it was presented with the Michael Keaton sacrifices definitely will do it. My childhood hero dying, one of my childhood heroes dying, is definitely contributes to me being moved by it. I just thought it was very poignant and very well done.
Yeah.
And it was a long movie, 2.5 hours as well. And yeah, when a character arc has that effect on me, something's working. Something's right. Regardless of what you want to say about the special effects, regardless of what you want to say about Ezra Miller's performance, the pacing, the music, all that stuff, the filming stuff,
emotional reaction from
in the end. That's right. The narrative created a reaction in me. Truth be told, it could have been Spider-Man about Ben Parker. It could have been Optimus Prime about Alpha Trion. It could have been Bruce Wayne about
Martha.
Thomas. Thank you very much. It could have been any characters, really. Truth be told, not to discredit the performances in the film, but what I am crediting is that the presentation of this narrative arc was effective enough for me personally to say, do you know what, I enjoyed this film. They did a good job, and I think that a lot of the criticism of it has been unfair, personally.
I can appreciate that. As I say, I mean, when I watched the movie, I initially was not hostile, but I did have negative sort of aspects of the movie. There were positives. I did very much like Michael Keaton's outing. I liked Supergirl's outing as well, and there were elements I really enjoyed. And to seek some of the lighter moments of the movie, I really marked out when I saw Nicolas Cage as Superman.
Yes. The multiverse sequences. Yes.
He is one guy that I get it. I mean, you either love Cage or you hate Cage, and I do love Cage. I think that he is a treasure. I think that he is fun, and he's got that Christopher Walken quality in terms of I turn up to see Nicolas Cage be Nicolas Cage. And the crazier, the better. And I also feel for him because he has wanted to break into superhero movies in some meaningful fashion for years.
Mm-hmm.
He even named one of his children Kal-El.
Oh.
And this is a man he is a comic book fan and he wants to be a part of this universe. And giving him this was very nice. I mean, I very much wouldn't have minded seeing the Nicolas Cage Superman movie.
Am I right in saying that the spider was in the script as well, right?
Yeah, so I've seen one or two videos about Kevin Smith discussing this and saying that the writer of those Superman movies was very much obsessed with the concept of a mechanical spider in the final climactic battle. And that gentleman went on to make Wild Wild West.
I never saw that.
Yeah,
had a giant mechanical spider in it, right? Am I right?
Very much did so. He decided, I think he copied his own notes on that one. And then also we got to see the original Supergirl and Superman, Christopher Reeve. And then just stood side by side, which is something we never got in those original movies either.
I can't remember, truth be told, if we ever got that. I can't remember.
No,
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I mean, the CGI was looking a little plastic when it showed the two of them stood together. But you can see what they were going for. They were going for that nostalgia pop. And I don't know if it felt cheap or not. It felt kind of nice. To me, anyway. There were little moments towards the end where they started referencing alternate universes.
Let's just say, if we were ever going to get Christopher Reeve and Nicolas Cage as Superman in the same movie, it was going to be a movie about multiverses. So
this is it.
Hats off to the writers for seeing this opportunity. And, you know, while I complained about fan service earlier in the movie regarding like the repetition of lines that are contextually incorrect, I thought this fan service was good, you know, because we got stuff we'd only ever heard about or always wanted, you know.
Funnily enough, this also ties into an in-story explanation from the DC Universe.
Mm-hmm.
That they have a concept in DC Universe I haven't heard it in recent years, but the late 90s and early 2000s made a lot of reference to hypertime.
Hypertime?
Hypertime is the analogy that every single canon aspect and depiction of every character is true and in canon at the same time in parallel universes. And this makes the allowance that there are multiple Batmen represented in one played by Val Kilmer, one played by George Clooney, and that these different Batmen all exist in different parallel universes, but they are all Batman. And it kind of opens up that there is no one true canon, that there are multiple canons that are playing out constantly across numerous parallel universes. And if anyone was going to discover it, it was going to be Barry Allen. He was the first man to breach the parallel universes back in Flash of Two Worlds.
Yes.
When he met Jay Garrick.
Yes.
And he has always been the first go-to when it comes to parallel universes ever since then, up until Crisis on Infinite Earths, when they merged all the universes together.
Yes.
Of which he was a significant part of as well. I will say, though, that this story, in using Michael Keaton and keeping it as Bruce Wayne, lost a scene that came out of Flashpoint, which actually really resonated with me.
Yes, I know exactly what you're going to say as well. Exactly what you're going to say.
Where Flash returns back to the Batcave after it's all said and done. And he has a letter from Thomas Wayne. And he gives it to Batman. And there's this really poignant moment where you see him holding the envelope. And he takes off his cowl. And you realise that he understands this is a letter that's not meant to be read by Batman. It's meant to be read by Bruce. And he sits and he reads it. And then he stands up and he hugs the Flash. And
very powerful,
it really was. It was an emotional moment. It was the very first contact that he'd ever had with someone. I mean, in a technical sense, it wasn't his father, but at the same time, it was his father reaching out from parallel universe.
Yeah.
Just to let him know that he's proud of him.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And that was a scene which, it really hit me right in the feels. I'm going to be honest.
I tell you now, mate. One of the reasons why that hit you so hard is because of all the foreshadowing in the story. There's so much foreshadowing of that happening. If you reread it now, there's all these great subtle hints that the reason why Thomas Wayne as Batman starts to warm to Barry Allen's Flash is because he tells him he's from a different universe where Bruce is alive. And all the way through the story, the graphic novel, there are these moments where Thomas is calculating this idea of there being another universe, and that seeing, because obviously in the Flashpoint comic you've got the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, which is destroying the world. The world is on its way out anyway, and he sees that if there is a world where Bruce is alive, then
and a better world
before it, then he will help the Flash. And like I said, there's all these great moments, just very subtle, very, very subtle lines of dialogue where you just know from the panel that's what he's thinking. Jeff Johns is a great writer. Also, Andy Kubert's art is great as well. I've always been a big fan of Andy Kubert. Yes, very good. That's what I mean with the question of, would you have preferred to have gotten Michael Keaton or a actual accurate adaptation of the Thomas Wayne Batman in the Flash movie? What would you have preferred? And it's a very hard question to answer, in my opinion, because the poignancy of Thomas Wayne sending that letter to Bruce across time and universes is very powerful. But then we got Michael Keaton Batman.
Yeah, I mean, although that said, if they'd done a more original Flashpoint, we also would have got to see Martha play a Joker.
Yes, and that's something really interesting as well, because in the side story they released for Batman, that's one of the things that Thomas Wayne says to Martha as the Joker, isn't it? When she's going mad and she's child killing, because that's what she does, which makes sense because her son is dead. He goes and finds her in where after she's kidnapped some children and says, I can bring Bruce back to life, and that's the thing that calms her from being the serial child killer Joker. Very powerful, very, very powerful. A good comic series as well, worth reading overall.
Absolutely. I mean, as a DC fan for several decades at this point, I only recently brought my wife into watching the animated movies. And the Flashpoint animated movie was the first thing she watched.
Oh, really?
In terms of DC.
It's very accurate adaptation. It's good.
And I think that had a similar effect on her to that Zero Hour had for me.
Oh, right, okay.
In terms of, it is a crisis story of sorts, which brings in multiple characters, and it makes you look at these characters. And she already had a passing knowledge of who Batman was. She'd seen the Schumacher and Burton and all that sort of stuff, but she hadn't read the comics or anything like that. She didn't have anything more than a surface level knowledge of Batman. And she found that story very interesting. She found it more than just a basic, this is your big bad of the weekend, we just got to find the best way in which to punch him. This was a human interest story of a man who just wanted to save his mum.
Well, that's exactly what makes this so good. And that's what makes the film good, in my opinion, is that you can relate to that. This is a character with conflict as at the forefront, and the conflict is that his mum is dead, his dad is in jail, and he has the power to potentially change that. And it's the ramifications, Marty McFly level of those, of that attempt to change that. And I think we can all identify with that. As sad as a tone it is to bring to the pod, none of us look forward to losing our parents. None of us. I think we can all empathise with Barry Allen's plight, even if it's played by Ezra Miller. And if you are ignoring that fact, you're heartless as far as I'm concerned.
I will say that I'm going to be watching the movie again. I mean, it's not like Ezra Miller has turned me off to the point where, I'm never going to watch this movie again. It's just personal taste. I'm not going to say he's a terrible Flash either. It's just he wasn't to my taste.
Yeah.
However, I don't think it's to the movie's detriment. There is enough in this movie, aside from him, that makes it a good movie to watch. I do think that there are a couple of wasted opportunities in this movie. I feel that Zod was criminally underused.
Yeah, they just needed something big to be destroying the world, didn't they? Yes. In the comics, it's the war between Aquaman and whatchamacallit and Wonder Woman. So, they just needed something, didn't they? And I guess, it would have been... It was a nice callback to have him come back.
Yes,
if
and
it
it was
was
nice to see him on screen. You weren't going to see another Man of Steel outing from him.
No, that's right, because he's,
no matter how much I wanted it, I do like seeing him go crazy. There is something about it which is just immensely entertaining to me. Even if I still feel that Terence Stamp defines Zod for me. But nonetheless, I mean, The Flash is still... If it's going the way I believe it is going, they want to turn this into a touchstone for the future DC movies. How it's going to spiral out from this remains to be seen, because, as you may be aware if you've watched the movie, it leads into a reveal of a third Batman in this movie, in the aspect of George Clooney, which is good for a laugh. It did crack me up.
I liked it. I liked it. I liked it. I mean, it's not.
He is known potentially as the worst Batman, and I do love the fact he embraces that wholeheartedly.
He does. He once said that if you came up to him and told him that you saw Batman and Robin, he'd refund you there and then.
Exactly. That is a man that has made peace with it.
He has become too successful and too respectable, since that film. He's impervious to it. But yeah, I liked that. I liked it. I mean, like I said, it could have been Michael Keaton coming out of the car, but at the same time, it was a good job. I mean, I think they should just restart the entire DC universe with the next film and forget everything that's happened before. Recast everyone, really. They need to just completely, create as much distance as they can between what has been a very uneven series of films that, in the audience's eye, often is not very good, unfortunately.
I don't see this being the end, though. I don't see this as the swan song. I mean, I don't know if Ezra Miller's going to stay with the DC franchise. However, I don't feel they would have put so much effort into promoting this movie if they didn't intend it to be a jumping off point for something more coming forwards. If this was the end of an era, I don't think they would have taken the approach they did with the PR for it. I think that because there is a massive movement of DC movies coming out in the very near future.
Of course, yes, the new James Gunn universe.
Yeah, and everything that's going to come with that. And I know that you and I are both desperately hoping for some form of an all-star Superman in the very near future.
Well, he's been talking about all-star Superman as one of the influences on this next film, so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see.
As a massive fan, I know we both are of the original comic of All-Star Superman, and if you haven't read it, I implore you to go out and read it.
It's one of the best comics we've ever read.
Fantastic story.
The animated film is great as well.
Yes, I mean, it is very much a condensed version of the comic, but it does...
What it does well is it adds great voice talent, and Christopher Drake's score is superb. Absolutely superb.
But it does remain to be seen how the DC Universe is going to utilize The Flash in terms of their future movies, and whether or not they're going to have any relevance in later movies. If they're going to use it in the same fashion that they did with Flashpoint in the New 52, wherein the events of Flashpoint led to an entire restart of the universe. Mm-hmm. But DC being DC couldn't ever really commit to a hard reboot of their universe. There was always elements that were going to drift up from the past, and I believe Henry Cavill has mentioned in social media in the past that he's not done with Superman.
Wasn't he supposed to be... He was signed up to something on and off, and then gone and on. I don't know.
I know. I mean, he had all those problems with Witcher and everything.
Yeah.
And that could be a pod in its own right, to be honest.
I'm not a fan of The Witcher anyway, so no thanks.
Watched the first season. It was okay. Henry Cavill was immensely entertaining.
I'm not a fan of the author of the books in the slightest. I think he's an awful human being. I like the games, but...
The books are not for you.
I've read the first book. Let's not get into this now. Fair enough. I'm gonna cut this.
Fair enough. Okay, we'll save it for another
time. It's
time.
already going on for way too long.
Okay, so in conclusion, I feel that The Flash, whilst in parts is a little flawed and maybe suffers from a little too much of a comic relief character playing the main character, is still a good movie. I did enjoy elements of it. Although it took a while for me to warm up to this movie. I had to kind of separate my own personal distaste for certain aspects of the actor and just enjoy the story. And it became a lot easier to do that once Keaton turned up. What about yourself, man?
I'll say I've already expressed how I feel about the film in quite quite a lot of detail. It's it's a solid 7 out of 10 for me. I think it's been unfairly maligned. I'm not the sort of person that will deduct a lot of points for poor CGI. The CGI is poor, but the story, in my opinion, is effective. And that's what's most important to me. I enjoyed the characters for the most part, and I enjoyed the execution of Barry Allen's story arc. So, for me, it gets a thumbs up. I enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I'd recommend it to people left, right, and centre. It really depends on how you feel about Ezra Miller, how you feel about DC sort of still kind of being a second-rate Marvel at this point in terms of the films, because that's what most people think when they watch these films.
To be fair, Marvel is a second-rate Marvel at this point.
Well, I wouldn't know, but but in the end, like, I don't know. A lot of people take these films very seriously and have really in-depth discussions and arguments about their finer and lesser points. I mean, we've been discussing them for like an hour, but I am very easy to please when it comes to this. This is not Citizen Kane, and nor does it need to be, as was just like Transformers. It doesn't need to be The Godfather. Doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be Andrei Rublev by Tarkovsky. I just need to be entertained with a solid story and some good characterization for a couple of hours, because that's why we watch these films, right?
Exactly.
So, that's what I got.
Excellent.
So we're going to call it in that segment, and we'll throw you into a break, and we'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. In this next segment, me and Mark are going to be running down our top 5 Batman actors of all time. In previous discussions, I may have said voice actors in grievous error. My apologies for that. It is going to be a mixture of live action and animated actors for me. I imagine it's probably going to be the same for Mark.
Yes.
I also imagine it's quite possible that both of our number ones could be the same. However, if it's not, high drama could possibly ensure this is going to be interesting, or it's going to be really boring and really obvious.
We're both children of the 80s, so that will colour our opinions towards Batman.
We'll see. Batman is a very important character to the both of us for different reasons. So, but basically, the way this is going to work is I'm going to flip a coin, and then we're going to, whoever calls it will go first, and they will reveal their choice. If the opponent, and I say opponent with humor, if the opponent's choice is either the same or higher, then we will discuss said choice later on in the podcast. So number 5 is do or die, basically. So I did explain this to Mark a minute ago, and he wasn't too sure. So basically, we're going to have to just have a go, and hopefully it'll work out.
I am pretty much going to be led by the hand on this one. I will be honest. Just tell me when to talk, and I will talk.
Well, basically, the way it'll work is if you are the winner of each position, so to speak, then you are the one who will be leading the conversation. Okay, Mark, heads or tails?
I will choose heads.
Okay, here we go. It's heads, so you get to go first. Okay, man. So you tell me your number 5.
Well, my number 5 in my Batman actor list is Ben Affleck.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I have him higher.
Really?
Yep. So for my number 5, it's Robert Pattinson.
I also have him higher.
Well, we'll go with me first, because we'll go with me first. What position do you have him in, out of interest?
I have him at number 3.
At number 3? Really?
Honestly, yes.
Wow, that surprises me. Okay, well, I'll lead the Pattinson discussion. So I have Pattinson at 5 because it's too early to make a complete opinion on him. While I think The Batman was a successful film in generating a new take on Batman, Matt Reeves' direction was exquisite, dark, serious. I didn't like the costume. I thought it was the worst costume ever in a live-action Batman film. It looked awful. What did you think of the costume?
The costume wasn't strong.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel that the costume doesn't make the Batman. I mean, it certainly contributes to it. However,
that's interesting. I think the costume's just as important. I know it's not necessarily his choice, but it is part of the representation of the character, because superhero comics especially are a visual medium.
It's all about the icon in terms of the image he cuts when he's against a lightning background on the edge of a building. That does add a lot to it.
Yes.
The animated series notwithstanding.
Well, let me tell you what it was about his costume that I disliked the most, because I realised what it was. If you look at a picture of the mask, too much of his face is visible.
It
goes
very
too
angular.
far back.
It angles up to his high cheekbones. I do agree with
it's too much. It's too much. Batman has always been a chin.
He borrowed that from Dredd in some fashion, or Dredd borrowed it from him.
Other way around, yeah. Batman predates Dredd by about 30 years, I think.
Valid point.
But and like, it was an interesting take on Batman, because in costume, this for the most part wasn't a stealth Batman, was it? It was.
It was an angry Batman.
Yes, in the sense that, like, he wasn't like stealthily, flying through the shadows. Sometimes he was already there and no one knew he was there because he was completely still. And then the Michael Giacchino score was begin with its like 1 2 1 2 note pattern that I always found represented his steps. Batman's presence was like an approaching impending doom for everyone.
It had the same quality as the Jaws theme.
Agreed. Yes. Definitely with you there.
The whole sinister, ominous,
yes.
Where is he?
Yes.
And that alluded to the amount of times you saw criminals look up and just stare into the shadows.
Yes, which was very effective. Which is very, very effective.
In fact, the fear of the Batman is more terrifying than Batman himself.
Absolutely. And it was shown in the movie, as you say, through the villains, which is a very easy and quick way to communicate such information, rather than characters even saying, it's the Batman, we're so terrified of him or whatever. We just see it. The music, the visuals, the shadows of the alleyway, it specifically sticks out in my mind, just communicates the impact that this vigilante has on this version of Gotham. But while in terms of like an image and a presence, I say that it doesn't correlate for me because the mask is an issue. The way he moved, the tank-like way he moved, was a new interpretation I found versus all the other versions, which I liked and enjoyed. Just like the film in general, it was its own thing. And as Batman, when he was acting in costume, I thought he was fine. As you stated a second ago, he was very angry, wasn't he? Often he would unleash rage, which also coincides with the concept that he's a young Batman, isn't it? It's borderline Batman Year One, which I really liked.
This is the point: is that this is one of the few versions of Batman that we've seen in his early years, other than Year One, which is the defining early Batman, wherein we see Bruce putting the pieces together.
Yes, the detective work was excellent in this film. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just have to say, one of my favorite aspects of the performance was the scenes where he was at a crime scene, and we didn't need a heavy-handed narration or some weird screen trickery. All we needed was Robert Pattinson standing there looking at the scene. Just, you could see it in his face how he was analyzing and taking everything in a Sherlock Holmesian manner, as Batman should.
But not just that, but I fully agree with that point in terms of you actually see his deductive reasoning taking place. When I say putting the pieces together, I mean in terms of building who he's going to be.
Oh, of course, this is
a Bruce that hasn't built Bruce Wayne yet.
Yes,
that's interesting. The whole when he's out of the costume, he doesn't have the Playboy suit to put on and become. He is still just that angry child, and Batman is the first version of himself that he built. And the potential that's still there to watch him in later movies start to construct the Playboy millionaire philanthropist.
Well, there's growth, isn't there, in this film? There is a great character arc, for the character. Batman, since the Christopher Nolan films, hasn't had an arc in his own films.
He's very much an established ideal.
Yes, exactly. So we got to see growth and internal conflicts. It's that same word. We should probably rename this to the Conflicts Podcast at some point. Because that's what we're always talking about, but it's so important in storytelling. But speaking about Bruce Wayne, the film made me cry at one point. It really moved me when Alfred was threatened and put in hospital. Remember?
That was a brutal sequence, especially when he wakes up next to Bruce.
Truth be told, as it was happening, it was very obvious what was going to happen. And I felt like the suspense was removed from me personally. But when he was sat with Alfred talking and expressing his emotions over the situation, obviously Rob Pattinson is a phenomenal actor. We've all been there after Twilight where we wrote him off, and for me it was The Lighthouse. When I saw The Lighthouse, the guy, I saw it at the cinema on its first run, and blown away. Any man who can stand up to William Dafoe's scenery chewing powers is a man worth respecting on the screen. And that scene where he was realizing what happened and Alfred was nearly killed, very moved, very, very moved.
I do feel that there is a lot to be seen in this Batman yet to come. And I see a lot of potential in him.
Yes, this is why I've got him at number 5 for me. Because it's too early still. There are certain elements of the performance and the representation that have not fully developed yet, or I would like to see developed further. But
I see.
It's a tentative position. If we were to do this again, maybe in 5-6 years' time,
with 1 or 2 movies under the belt, we can get a better perspective.
I think he could be much higher.
I mean, have you heard about who's going to be one of the confirmed villains for the next Batman movie?
No.
This gave me pause for thought when I heard this, and it made me go, I don't know if this breaks the universe in which he exists in, because there is a large rogues gallery they could draw upon, and this was an interesting choice.
Go.
But there's confirmation that apparently Clayface is going to be one of the next villains.
That's a great choice.
And for a Batman that so far has been based hard in reality, that is an interesting choice.
Yes, that's very exciting. Very, very exciting.
Because he's also a character that has never been represented on the big screen, which I always appreciate seeing characters that
I love Clayface in the animated series.
Oh, a very interesting character, a very tragic character as well.
Yes. Well defined and flawed and interesting.
And one that can lead to a lot of very interesting sequences, especially facing the Batman. It's just this universe that's been created so far. I'm curious to see what sort of directions they're going to take it in, because it would have been too easy to go down the routes of Joker and Scarecrow.
Yes.
And this is a different twist. I mean, I don't imagine they'll make him the top villain. I feel that they probably will rely back on one of the big 4.
Yes.
In terms of Catwoman, Joker, Penguin, or Two-Face. But I do feel that he's got a part to play.
Yes. So, anything else to say about Pattinson?
I look forward to seeing what he's going to do next. I mean, as I say, I've seen similar things to yourself. I've written him off in similar fashion early on in his career, and I have been more than pleasantly surprised by him. And I really feel that he's got big things ahead of him if this franchise goes well. Okay,
so you're number 4.
My number 4 is Christian Bale.
Really? I have him higher.
I see.
For my number 4, I have Ben Affleck, who was your number 5, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then you can lead this one.
Okay, so Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck plays a Batman that's a lot more jaded and cynical. He is a man who's to walk further closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning. He's many allusions to much more fantastic adventures, usually by way of Alfred, in terms of penguins with rocket launchers on their backs and things like that, when they allude to in Batman vs. Superman. He is an interesting Batman, mainly because he also seems to borrow somewhat from the Frank Miller Batman. in terms of being a little more bulky, a little slower maybe than he was in his earlier years.
In my opinion, he's halfway between Miller and Jim Lee's Batman.
The established Batman, so.
In terms of look, I'm talking about. And the bulkiness of him, the muscular take on him. Because Jim Lee's Batman is huge as well. Absolutely humongous.
Yeah. And that Batman, whilst he is the defining Batman, he's the one that I think of the most. If you were to ask me to bring up a mental image of what Batman looks like in my head from the comics, it would probably be the Jim Lee Batman.
Yeah, I do think he is like, I don't know, the 70s Batman, because I read those comics in the 80s when I was a kid, is kind of important to me. The James Bond sleek version of Batman, I suppose.
The blue and grey, slender.
Yeah, it's the blue and grey, but like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that is to me Batman as well. I mean, as discussed in the previous episode, Frank Miller's Batman was very, very important to me. So seeing the closest version we have ever had of Frank Miller's Batman, crossed with Jim Lee, but also, as you stated as well, crossed with Arkham Batman on the big screen, was a sight to behold for me.
Yeah. And they do pay him his fair dues in Justice League, in that he is the linchpin of the formation. He is the one who puts the footwork in. He puts the computer work in. He's the one who goes around and contacts these individuals
Let me put a question to you, actually. Because we've discussed how we felt that Batman versus Superman happened too early.
Yes.
But at the same time, I do feel like using the story elements of Batman versus Superman and Batman himself, Ben Affleck's Batman, as the catalyst of forming the Justice League was kind of a cool idea. Because Superman represented what was good. At this point, Batman is older and jaded and cynical. And Superman re-inspires him, doesn't he? And I think that's quite a good arc. Even though I was not happy about the order of things, in terms of what was on the paper, let's say, rather than comparing it to what had come before, or what I would prefer, or my own headcanon, it doesn't hold up because it never does. I thought it was quite well thought out, actually.
He ends up with that obsession of he is the best of us, even though he's an alien.
Yes.
And because he doesn't see him as an alien, he sees him as a hero, same as himself. And he is the best of us heroes. And that almost goes to a point of obsession. I will say, I mean, in terms of the resurrection elements and everything, that he is the one that's driving it forward the most, even with other people telling him this is not necessarily a good idea.
To say that Bruce Wayne is a man of obsessive compulsive tendencies is an understatement as well. So very true to the character. And
it's been represented through the comics throughout that Clark and Bruce are best friends.
Yes.
And
yes.
I do feel that some of that comes through in this. I mean, there are
the beginnings of it, isn't it? The beginnings.
There is the formation of the relationship.
Yes.
I do feel that Bruce maybe could have bought that farm maybe a couple of hours earlier, but but nonetheless, it's there is a certain charm to it, and I do feel that Ben Affleck, when he was announced as Batman, as happens with just about every single announcement of Batman, when it comes out that so-and-so is playing Batman, there is a backlash. And it's because, understandably, Batman is a beloved character. It is one that people hold very true to them. And when
are you telling me that you thought that he didn't have the chin? Because no one has had the chin before. Come on, man.
No.
Ben Affleck is the only actor to have the chin.
Thing is that he was strong in that role. He actually paid it justice, for want of a better term.
Yes.
And in a movie that certainly has its flaws and has its cracks, there were no cracks on him. And to be honest, it gave us probably one of the best, maybe second best compared to The Flash, in terms of a Batman fight sequence.
Yes.
I will say that the recent Flash movie did give us that Michael Keaton sequence. That's going to stay with me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like Ben Affleck's character. I've known him a long time throughout the movies I've watched, all the way back to when he was working with Kevin Smith.
Mallrats, yes.
Exactly.
Mallrats.
And it's been
fun
to
watch.
Call
me Donnie.
Don't get me loose on me. And it has been a lot of fun to watch him grow. And if you told me, 10 years ago that he was going to play Batman, I would have turned around to you and gone, are you absolutely sure? I mean, is Matt Damon out off the cards? So, but nonetheless...
Matt Damon should have been Robin.
I will say this, though, that he impressed me very much.
I think that this version of Batman, as you stated, is a Batman that's already established long into his career. And in order to for an actor to portray that well, you needed someone who could portray it with confidence. And he had it in spades for me.
And also relay almost the weariness.
Yes.
He's seen some shit. He has been through some things already, and now there's a whole nother level of alien shit happening on planet Earth, and he apparently is the only one with the resources and the will to draw the right people together.
Yes.
So to that end, he did relay that well.
What did you think about the fact that his voice was digitized at first?
That was a tricky one. I mean, I will be honest, because it was in canon digitized. It isn't actually like a transponder thing he had on his throat to conceal his voice, wasn't it?
Yes, which makes sense.
It ties into the whole kind of, he is crazy prepared, and you would imagine that Bruce, considering the amount of people he interacts with in the Batman, he would want to disguise every element, including his voice. He probably has a very distinctive voice in the universe. He probably has been on television a whole manner of times. And in this day and age where you can Google a song, it would make sense for him to protect his voice pattern. So I actually had no problem with that.
Well, there are AI bots that stream podcasts looking for royalty, music.
That's it. Then you've got AI covers that can remap a different person's voice onto another song, and you can now listen to Living on a Prayer sung by Freddie Mercury. I mean, the current technology is accelerating faster by the year, and having aspects like that introduced to the character is not unrealistic. Yeah,
it made sense. I do think, though, that with his later appearances, he dropped the synthesized voice, and he just started doing his own Batman voice, and the Batman voice was good.
I feel at that point, suspension of disbelief does step in. There is a point when, whilst it's a good concept, you don't want your character to be talking like that all the time if he's going to spend 90% of the time in costume.
But at the same time, though, right? What sort of person is going to be talking like you and I now, then put a costume on, start talking like this?
Christian Bale.
We'll get to that later. But I do think that the synthesized voice was maybe a reaction to the Bale. Voice, maybe. But one thing I will say about Affleck is that I don't think his Batman was given the chance to be in the right film, because obviously the Ben Affleck Batman film never happened. Which I think is a crime. It's just another example of the DC universe being poorly managed.
I will say this, though, it does give the character some weight that he does have such a gravitational pull on other characters. However, you're right. An establishing movie for him would have been certainly something. I mean, he shared the credit with Superman, but that was a Superman movie.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been an establishing movie, more of a development movie. Because the character, like I said, I genuinely believe that Ben Affleck's performance was very good, and that he established the character instantly. It's just that he was in a rubbish film. Same as Henry Cavill being in rubbish films in general as Superman. Like these actors who are well cast and performed admirably in the roles, if not excellently, just weren't just the wrong films, I mean, can you imagine Ben Affleck being in The Batman instead of Robert Pattinson, having a film that good?
Whilst it would be awesome, I can't imagine him playing that role.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that wouldn't it have been nice if we had a director, or it was the film that he wanted to make himself?
A much more serious and career-defining Batman.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Real shame, in my opinion. A real shame. I don't think he was given the chance.
I don't know if he's done yet. I mean, is he still attached to the name?
I don't know. I mean, Superman's been recast in the upcoming, new universe.
Although that said, I was hearing rumours as far back as the end of 2022 where Henry Cavill was saying he wasn't necessarily done yet.
Yeah.
With Superman.
Superman's been recast already.
Yes, but right now, how many Batmen do we have according to Flash?
I don't know. I think they need to drop. I think they need to move on. As do we, because I don't think there's really anything else left to say about Affleck. Unless you got anything else you want to jump in there with?
And honestly, not. No.
Okay. What was your number 3, Mark?
My number 3 was Robert Pattinson.
Okay. My number 3 was Michael Keaton. Is your Michael Keaton position higher than number 3?
Yes, he is.
Really? Interesting. We'll save Michael Keaton for later then.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay. So now we go to number 2. I'm going to reveal my number 2 first. My number 2 is Christian Bale. Your Christian Bale was number 5.
That's correct.
So now you need to reveal your number 2.
My number 2 is Kevin Conroy.
Oh.
I feel that that's eliciting a similar reaction from you.
You got Michael Keaton at number 1.
Yes, I do. And I am not ashamed to admit it.
And Kevin Conroy at number 2.
They are close in my mind, however.
What? I'll believe it. Okay, I'm interested. So you'll be doing Keaton later.
Yes.
I'll do Bale now.
Okay.
Wow. So Christian Bale is an interesting proposition, really. I mean, I would probably say that Christian Bale's Batman is the most inconsistent Batman out of all of these actors.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Batman Begins, I mean, he is very much a fractured character.
No, when I mean inconsistent, I mean inconsistent in terms of quality.
Ah.
I think he has almost the highest highs out of my top 5. Almost. But he definitely has the lowest lows. So, for example, with Batman Begins, an important part, as we discussed in detail a minute ago regarding Ben Affleck, is the Batman voice. In Batman Begins, the Batman voice was spot on. You know, even when he shouts, "Where were the other drugs going?" You know,
Nice God.
Swear to me. Swear to
Yeah.
me. You know, even, you know, he's angry.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other lines where he's a bit quieter. And
Yeah.
for
But
me,
he's a bit more measured.
yes,
he
he's
does
perfect.
have a good Batman voice.
Yes. And then we get to, I mean, I say, the swear to me, where the old drugs are going. Those lines have become so
meme-worthy
now that I, in general, with his performance as Batman, it's as funny as it is brilliant to me now. You know, it's just so over the top and so brutal and almost so ridiculous that I just absolutely adore it. I wouldn't say it's the most accurate Batman voice in the world, but it's definitely an interesting take on it. I remember reading an interview with Bale when he said that he was struggling to find his way into the costume. Why would someone get into that costume? And what would they feel like? And to Bale, if I remember correctly, he stated that a man in that kind of costume would be a ball of pure emotion. And that emotion that Batman carries at that age, because this is early on especially, regarding Batman Begins, is one of rage. Pure rage. So it kind of makes sense that he gets very angry in Batman Begins and uses the voice in that way. It's just that in The Dark Knight, which is easily the best film of the 3, overall, the voice is a problem. It's too much. He's just standing there talking in death metal cookie monster voices, and apparently, Nolan's like edited it in post as well, as he did with the 3rd film.
Are you referring to sequences such as the interrogation sequence with the Joker?
Yes, just in general.
There's something very off about seeing Batman in a sterile, brightly lit room interrogating someone. It doesn't fit for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was still some excellent back and forth between Joker and Batman.
Well, this is what's really good about that scene is that the Joker's getting one up on Batman because
he has control of the situation.
Exactly. I mean, this is one of the things that's interesting about these films. Is that in some interpretation of Batman, he's presented as the smartest, most intelligent human being on the planet that's not Lex Luthor. You know, not in terms of being a scientist, but in terms of practicality. Isn't it?
Crazy prepared. There's crazy prepared, then there's Batman prepared.
Yeah, exactly right. But the Joker, and obviously, Batman is incredibly physically imposing. He's trained his body to peak perfection.
Mm-hmm.
How can the Joker even attempt to fight him? And it would be to twist him. to break him emotionally and mentally. And I think that's one of the things they got right with The Dark Knight, actually, and specifically that scene, because it's over a love interest, if I remember correctly, and he tells them he split them up. Am I correct? It's been a few years since I've seen it.
Yes, it's all about when Harvey Dent and the love interest have been separated and placed in different locations.
Yes. Very powerful scene. But going back to Batman Begins, one of the things that's interesting about Bale's performance as well is that we'll talk about Keaton, the way every actor approaches Batman in a different way. I think Bale approached Batman differently to all the others because in the Nolan films, Batman is not a character. He's an extension of Bruce Wayne. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
The way Bale performs Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins is you have the millionaire playboy sequences like in the restaurant when he's in the water fountain.
And he does do that smarmy smile.
Yes, very good at doing the smarmy.
Yeah.
But that's the fake Bruce Wayne.
Yes, and you can tell when the mask slides down. He does it well in terms of the moment people aren't looking at him, you see the mask drop.
Yes, this is something that Bale is very, very good at. When he's in closed doors in the other films talking to Michael Caine's Alfred, that is the closest to Batman calm, let's say, that we see. And well, the real Batman / Bruce Wayne, just like as I'm sure we'll discuss with other interpretations, Bruce Wayne is certain actors' extensions of Batman.
They had this in the comics where they had specific sequences, such as John Johns has the ability to create telepathic conferences for all of the Justice League in the comics. Mm-hmm. And when you're in the conference room in his mind, you get represented the way you see yourself. So, for instance, Batman turns up in a darker, much more intimidating Batman outfit, whilst Superman turns up as Clark in dungarees and boots as a farmer. And it's interesting to see these characters, how they see themselves, as opposed to how the public sees them. It's an interest. I mean, you see the other characters like Wonder Woman and Green Lantern, and it shows testament to their personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting touch. I always loved that Clark Kent is the real character and Superman is the person he becomes to help people.
Yes.
Well, Batman.
Clark is the son in the end, isn't he? Clark is his Earth name that he's given. He's christened.
Yes, as opposed to Kal-El and But that is the real person. Superman is purely a suit he puts on so he can help people.
Whereas Batman is the other.
Batman is the real person. Bruce Wayne is the suit he puts on so he doesn't get discovered.
I'm sure this is going to be the topic of the next couple of actors we discuss. What you're saying now. What I want to say, go back to is Bale. He's different. He's very, very different. Because Batman Begins is very much about Bruce Wayne's journey, isn't it? It's about his journey to become Batman. His journey to find purpose, to find a way to deal with the anger and the frustration in him because of the murder of his parents. And I think that in none of the other films is it better presented.
I did appreciate that. The training with Neeson and...
I was just about to say, well, Neeson's Ra's al Ghul is an incredible performance. The moustache is exquisite.
It's somewhat understated compared to how I expected Ra's al Ghul to be presented.
But not comic accurate at all.
No, but nonetheless, it's still a very poignant character and very interesting to watch.
Yes. I liked their relationship. Their fight sequence with the stunning Hans Zimmer score and the ice.
The father-son relationship that seems to build. And
that's what happened. That's what he represents. He lost his father, and then he finds a new father in, Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul. But just as the son often does, grows up and defines himself by his own boundaries, his own rules, and often disagrees with his father and goes his own separate way. But what is also very poignant and powerful about the Batman Nolan films is that Alfred's Michael Caine, should we say, Michael Caine's Alfred, also represents a father figure to him. It's like a dual force pulling him in other ways because Michael Caine's Alfred is like a moral compass for him who reminds him who he is. Don't burn down what your father built. Your father was a philanthropist. He did this, he did that. Don't turn away on it. You've got to...
Don't let revenge destroy his memory.
Yes, which is so effective. So effective in the film. I cared more about Bruce Wayne as a character than in any version of Batman ever, because of the narrative, storytelling choices made by the writers and the performances of the actors involved. I think that he had an imposing presence, despite the fact he's not as bulky and as humongous as the later Affleck. Purely through his physicality as an actor. You know, Batman was presented as Bruce Wayne is presented as a ninja-like figure, isn't he? Because of the ninja training with the...
In the early days, yes. I mean, in the
film,
early movies, they were implying the aspects of the fact
they
he is
really
trained
lent
with
into it, didn't
the
they?
League of Shadows and
Yes.
the elements that come with that. That it's more than just learning martial arts; it's learning a way of life that he then made his own.
Yes, which is where obviously he disagreed with Ra's al Ghul's ethics.
The justice,
his father's ethics were in him still.
Yes.
Again, it's great storytelling, dude. Great storytelling.
I will say, I do see the parallels between the three movies in terms of the way in which the villains were dispatched. I mean, for instance, with the first one, Neeson, he allowed him to fall. He goes, I don't have to...
Yes, a great sequence.
I don't have to save you. But then he does exactly that for Ledger. Yes. When Ledger falls, he realizes his morals have evolved.
But an interesting aspect is that he falls in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
Not only does he fall onto Bane's knee, he falls into the pit. The music that Hans Zimmer composed for The Dark Knight Rises, again, more talking on the fall and rising connotations, which is played when he climbs out of the pit, is called "Why Do We Fall," which is obviously named off, which is a reference to the line in the film.
Back up, Master Bruce.
So, you know, there's a great correlation
and
there. Really.
There is a certain bookend to be seen with Bane being his final opponent, because Bane is, of sense, a stepbrother to him. They both had the same.
This version of yes.
And to that regard, I mean, it's never actually directly alluded to. It's just more implied that it is a certain competition between the two of them.
Yes. Yes, I was just going to say, actually, talking about the sequence when he dispatches Ra's al Ghul is a very good example of Bale acting with the mask on. Keaton is very good at this as well, although he has to pout a little bit to fill the mask. But
come on!
It's not his fault. He's little. But Bale and Keaton. But Bale is very good at acting with his eyes. There's a few sequences where he just looks through that mask, and what you see is like I always envision him as, like I said, he's being that ball of emotion and just pointing at whoever's in front of him. There's so much like anger and intent in it that it's like a terrifying presence. But at the same time as well, in Begins specifically, I'd say Begins is my favorite film of the three, by the way, my personal favorite. On paper, Dark Knight is probably the best because it is heat with Batman, but
I'd rate Dark Knight above Begins.
Oh no, Begins is the personal film, as you are probably learning how I feel about it. I'm all about character, and this film is all about character. And the scene when he invades the docks is presented like a horror movie with the music, the stealthy
stalking,
dispatches, the stalking. Brilliant, great representation. Again, never seen Batman presented that way on the big screen. You know, ever.
Just like an Arkham level in terms of...
well, Arkham came later, yes, but absolutely. But the fight scenes in the Nolan films are a mixed bag, very mixed bag. As we discussed previously, often very poorly edited and shot, which is a shame.
I do feel it is criminal in the ways in which some of the bad guys were dispatched in the Nolan movies.
Yeah.
I still have issue with the way in which Bane was resolved. I feel that having Catwoman turn up on the Batbike and just shoot him was...
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It was not a good resolution for that character.
No, I agree with you.
Because it showed Batman, I guess he somewhat bested him in combat in the middle of the fight sequence in the street and everything, but there was no definitive moment of, I've defeated you. It was, that part really kind of rubbed me a touch the wrong way. That I get these are comic book movies, but there is almost...
Are they though?
This is true. They are trying to break away from that.
They're not really comic book movies, in my opinion. You know, Someone I know once said to me, and they hate comic book movies, they said, I watched that Batman Begins. And I really liked it until Batman came out. Because, but it's a good movie in that regard. It takes itself very seriously. It's very earnest. It's very earnest, but it's presented as a story arc for a human being. And it's very effective. So to summarize, unless you have anything else you want to put, let me rephrase that. What is your opinion on Bale? Because I was talking for a long time there.
I mean, I like Bale. I do like his Batman. He became a definitive Batman for a long time. However, I do have people that I place above him. Mm-hmm. I do think there were elements of that character that didn't quite rub me the right way. And that's not because of necessarily Bale. Maybe that's because of the writing. Mm-hmm. But I don't have anything I can heavily criticize him for. It's just more like minor nitpicks in terms of the character in which the direction he was put in the story. And I feel that whilst that may not be fair to him in terms of how he portrayed the character, it is unfortunately my impression of the overall story of that Batman.
Okay. That's interesting. Because I think it's the story that makes him so effective. The heavy lifting is done in Begins. In The Dark Knight, it is filmed as like a police procedural heist-esque thriller. And there's very little in the way of character development in Batman, especially compared to The Begins and The Dark Knight Rises.
And there's the point I was waiting for you to get to. Dark Knight Rises is one of the major ones for me.
Okay.
It is the element of the fact that Batman retires.
That's not Christian Bale's fault, though.
Yes, but nonetheless, it still colours my opinion
of the character. That's
Batman.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, in the end, this representation of Batman ends up being.
And I'm not just talking about retires once, retires twice.
Yeah.
The first time due to Gamini, and the second time
it's not explained in the slightest. Well, I think it's more down to the fact it's because of the death of what's her name. Who was played by Katie Holmes in the original film, Maggie Gyllenhaal.
I get it. Yeah, I mean, there is
also Two-Face. Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent was like the White Knight, and Bruce
he was
Wayne
meant to become the villain. Yes.
Yeah, thinking about it and remembering, Bruce Wayne was looking to retire in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, he wanted to be able to step away from a Gotham that was okay.
Yeah, because he was seeing in Dent the hero that Gotham needs. Obviously.
Yes, and Dent was dead at the end of Dark Knight. So the hero was clearly left the stage. So I don't know. I mean, even if he wanted to become the villain that Gotham needed so Harvey didn't get the blame, I don't feel that Batman would have stepped away from his vigilantism. No. The Batman that we know in the comics would never step away. No. I think it was brave of Nolan and David S. Goyer and whatnot to attempt to write Batman an ending, a complete story. I mean, everyone wants a happy ending for the hero. I get that. But there are some characters that aren't destined for a happy ending. No, that's right. I would agree with you there. I mean, giving them the happy ending would destroy them. Yeah, definitely. He'd go crazy. Exactly. Imagine him, like, sitting there in a cafe with Selena Kyle, who was whatever. I mean, I give it 20 minutes before he's looking down alleyways to punch out anyone. Yeah, just punch some fools. Oh, yes, I haven't punched a fool in over 20 minutes. But the thing is that he is insane. This is the one thing that all Batmen have to realize when they're playing the character. This is a character that is snapped. He is fucking crazy, and he has the money, the resources, and he is able to do what he needs to do in order to channel this rage into something positive. Yes. I mean, he is not that far removed from a lot of the villains that he's attacking. The only difference is he's high functioning and he makes it work for him. Absolutely. Yeah, man. With you there, 100%. And whilst it's nice to think of the idea of Batman settling down with Catwoman or Wonder Woman or whoever your fancy is, but Bruce wouldn't want that. Mm-hmm. He couldn't. No, because then that would mean there was no more crime. I mean, he isn't trying to get revenge for his parents in terms of catching Jack Napier or Joe Chill or whoever it was that was responsible, depending on the canon. He is responsible for making sure that no one else ever has to live through what he lived through. I kind of envision him as well as kind of lost in his crusade. I think that because in most of the canons, he eventually Joe Chill / Jack Napier, they get their just desserts eventually. Yes. But then he carries on. And I feel like I often envision it as being because he's in too deep.
You can't stop.
I mean, I even like the stories that there are some canons that say that he never catches Joe Chill.
Yes.
He never gets that revenge. He never gets the satisfaction.
That would be a catalyst, wouldn't it? A good catalyst for him to never end. So.
The closest thing I found to it was a comic I read not too long ago, which shows Bruce Wayne trawling the mean streets of Gotham, going through pawn shops until eventually he buys a gun in a pawn shop.
Yeah.
He takes it back to the Batcave, looks at it for a while, tests it, and after speaking with Alfred, he confirms that this is the gun that shot my parents.
Ooh.
And then it shows him melting that gun down and using it to form part of the body armor across his chest.
Cool.
And then he says, at one point, it tore my life apart, and now it will protect me.
That's cool. That's a cool idea.
And that's a concept that I can get behind. That is the kind of insanity that you do expect from someone like Batman. It's got a weird justice to it. Do we have anything more that you'd like to bring for Bale's Batman?
Well, I've pretty much said everything, I think. I mean, as I said, the reason why I enjoy Bale so much as Batman is because of all the heavy lifting done in the first film. All the characterization there. You know, I'm so invested in that character by the end of it that there can be less characterization in the second and third film or whatever. So, long story short. So, before we go to our number ones, honourable mention. Who's your honourable mention?
Okay, my honourable mention is Will Arnett.
Will Arnett? Oh, okay.
Now, I love Will Arnett's Batman. Was it yours, or do you have someone different?
No. I have someone different.
I see. I do love Will Arnett's Batman. It's hard to explain why. I mean, I watched the Lego Batman movie, and I watched the Lego movie, and I watched the Lego movie Part 2. And there is something about that Batman that on every level shouldn't work. And I love him. I don't know why. It's just a character that I could watch for a long, long time. It's hilarious to me. It takes all the elements of Batman that are all dark and brooding, twists them up to absurd levels, and the voice is just perfect for me. It just cracks me up. It's hard to explain, but I do really, really like watching the Lego Batman. It's a guilty pleasure for me, and I don't feel so guilty about it anymore. The more I talk to other people, discover that a lot of people actually really do like it.
I haven't seen it, to be honest with you.
I will say Will Arnett and Michael Cera as Robin.
Yeah, I heard about Michael Cera. Yeah, I love Michael Cera.
Utterly brilliant.
Yeah, a lot of people love it.
It is. It's because those movies were made for fans.
Yeah,
they were made for people that already have seen the Bales, and they've already seen everything that comes with Batman in terms of characters analyzing the deep psychosis and mental state of an anguished soul, and think, well, maybe we don't need to go in that route. Maybe people just want to go to a Batman movie and just smile.
Sometimes we just want 60s Batman.
I still love there's one line early on in the Batman movie where you just see him bust in on a room full of goons and he tells you, Batmobile, overcompensate. And then his Batmobile comes through the wall. And that was the point at which I was just like, you know what, I'm fucking sold.
You were there, yeah. That's a good line. That's a good line. I liked it.
So I very much like Will Arnett's Batman. There is another one on the cards, and I'd be curious to see this treatment used on the whole Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself? What was your honourable mention, man?
My one is Peter Weller.
Ooh.
Yes. Peter Weller's voice as RoboCop is so iconic. You cannot hear his voice and not think of the
Dead or Alive, you're coming with me.
any line from those films, for God's sake. It's never ending. But while I wouldn't say he necessarily brought anything new to the table, I thought that his voice was very well suited to Miller's Batman. You know, when he says mutants surrender now or be destroyed, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know,
he has the gravel in his throat. That's needed
all the
for
people
that yeah.
I've killed by letting you live. Oh my God, it is bang on. You know, like, again, there's a degree of bias. I like the film. The score by Christopher Drake is absolutely superb and perfectly suits the film. The atmosphere, you know, again, it is the best Batman story ever told, in my opinion. Bar none. It is my favourite, whatever. Again, it is. I am biased, but it's just something about the way he says those lines, it just works for me.
You can see him channeling in his inner 80s.
Yeah. It's just it's a heart pick, a big heart pick for me. That is. Okay, so who is your number one?
My number one's Michael Keaton.
Oh, unbelievable. A crime.
I strongly disagree.
The truth is, I think you can talk about both of these actors together. Kevin Conroy is my number one.
Mm-hmm.
But truth be told, without Michael Keaton, there is no Kevin Conroy. They are like eternally linked. Michael Keaton is often credited as being the man who separated Batman and Bruce Wayne, right?
Well, he is the man that no one could see as Batman when they first announced him.
Not talking about that specifically. I'm talking about the fact he used a different voice.
Oh, he defined the Bat voice, so to speak.
Exactly, and it's not like he had a voice where he was like Bell going or whatever. He just, I don't know. I'll let you talk about Michael. You do Michael Keaton now. Come on,
okay,
do it. You do Michael Keaton.
But as I say, man, Michael Keaton, when he was first announced as Batman, there was public backlash, like there is every time a Batman's announced.
Mr. Mom.
Yes, and who is this? He's got curly hair. Like he's a comedian. How could this guy play Batman? And that is the whole point. That if anyone turned around in Gotham and said, "Oh yeah, Bruce Wayne's Batman," you'd be like, "You're fucking joking, mate. What?
Yeah.
You mean Bruce Wayne, the guy that's at all the fucking sort of like socialite events and shit? Like, nah, man. Nah."
I mean, if Bruce Wayne was 6'4", built like a brick shithouse, you'd probably go, actually, I could imagine it. But because they went for the normal looking guy.
But he was so unassuming until the moments when he needed to be more. The sequence, for instance, when he's listening to his party guests in the party gossiping about him. And you see him just sat in a chair staring at the camera. And you can see the look in his eyes where he's kind of almost sort of smiling at the fact that he's got control of this situation. The way in which he comes out controls them in terms of just pure dialogue. He is a man who's a lot more confident, but doesn't let it show. He doesn't feel the need to flex on people when he's Bruce Wayne because he is that confident in and of himself because he knows that he's Batman. And that Batman was my Batman. That was the very first thing I was introduced to.
Me too.
And coupled with Nicholson's Joker, I thought the two of them were brilliant. And one day we will get to a Joker analysis as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that is a very good flip of the coin on this one in terms of analysing these sort of characters. But I do like Michael Keaton's Batman. I love that they brought him back for The Flash. I thought that was a very nice send-off to him. I mean, there are elements of the comics that are very... Oh, not comics, my apologies. Elements of the movies, which are very comic book. And I appreciate them for that.
Yes.
The way in which he walks, even the stupid head turns. Everything about that is just... That's at the time, it may have been a production choice and it may have even been criticised. But at this point, it's just entered the lore. In terms of that was the 80s Batman. And even bringing it up to Batman Returns in terms of just even subtle reactions to him, such as when in the ballroom, when the Penguin attacks and everyone's overstated reactions, including his own, to realizing it's being attacked and he has nowhere to get changed into Batman. Things like that. I just love them for that. They are comic book movies through and through. And it's nice to see a comic book movie adapted up to a more realistic take, such as the likes of Nolan or the more recent Matt Reeves, and to see the Batman brought into the real world. But there is still something comic book about the character that I do like to see people embrace about him.
You need to remember that when that film came out, right, even though it was a comic book movie, it was viewed as being very dark, very serious. I had my father to vouch for this, because it came out in the 80s when he was into it or whatever. And he's told me a lot about the perceptions of the character, the actor, and the films at the time. Wasn't it Tim Burton who said, holding a copy of The Dark Knight Returns, this is what we're doing? Obviously, in retrospect, The Dark Knight Returns is far darker than the Burton movies. But at
that's
that
a story
point,
that wouldn't have flown at that point.
Yeah, at this point in time, if you think about cultural context, yes, they made a dark, serious movie that treated its character with respect and reverence.
And
to a degree.
I mean, it was immensely violent. You could compare it to the likes of Superman.
It was a 15.
This is
but
it.
they invented the 12A for it at cinema.
Because they had to, because it wasn't quite like, we're not talking sort of like Commando here. Or Commando
No, of course not. But that's comic book violence. Batman had dark and serious violence.
But there are times when he like literally shoves dynamite down someone's trousers and pushes them down a manhole. There are times when he releases bombs and blows up.
That's when I start to get critical.
It's that he is a violent Batman. I mean, people can criticize Affleck's Batman for having a Batwing that has guns and guns down goons and crushes them with his Batmobile, but this has been going on for a while. Batman is a violent
This is the Batman, yeah, who will walk up to you and he would take a punch and be so brutal that he just looked down and suddenly you realize you've got TNT strapped to you and you're dead. And he smiles.
Yep. And then pushes you away. He's like, yeah. He is. I mean, I like this Keaton. I do. It's very difficult for me to define why, because a lot of it is tied up with childhood nostalgia.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that can be the aspects by which you define the character and your initial introductions to them can set and embed what you look for in later versions of them.
Yes. Yes, Keaton's an interesting one. So I agree with everything that you say, but over time I have become more critical of his performance in those films. Yes, he innovated the dual voice. So something that I admire is his Bruce Wayne. Because one of the biggest problems with 1989 Batman and Returns is that Tim Burton wasn't interested in Batman in his own film. He was more interested in the villains. The Batman origin story is sort of given to you retroactively in the beginning by showing you another... it's kind of smart how they do it, I suppose. But when you look at it overall, it's kind of obvious that he was more interested in the Joker. Batman doesn't get the best lines or the best scenes. He didn't chew the scenery. And what I think is very smart about Keaton's performance is that I think he recognizes that. The Batman that he plays as Bruce Wayne is one who is very distant. In almost every single scene that he's in, it's like he's distracted. There's something there that's not there. He's not present. There's like a calling. He's thinking about something else.
He's looking to do where he wants to be, and
he's haunted. It's haunted Bruce Wayne. And I think that this subtle performance of his makes Bruce Wayne quite a powerful, resonating, character.
Well, you can tell that all of his dialogue is, when he's talking as Bruce Wayne, you can tell he is got the Bruce Wayne suit on.
Yes.
That he is not, that's not the character you're talking to there.
Correct.
That is the part he's playing whilst
the real Bruce Wayne is the one you described. It's the one where he's sat there looking at the screen. The best Batman moment for me is in this film. In any live action moment. Any visual. Top 5. It's in the top. It's up there. One of my favorite Batman moments is, and you can criticize this film for changing the Joe Chill origin story of killing.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Whatever in the end,
that was a mistake. I do agree with you.
The writers felt like they needed to have a connection between Batman and the Joker to make their relationship more relatable, so they had the Joker kill his parents.
Killer was far better when he was some unassuming goon rather than being a major tieback.
They didn't think that the general public would believe that. This choice gave us that incredible poignant moment where the Joker is calling out Batman and he says, "I've taken my makeup off. Let's see if you can take off yours." And oh God, I want to swear it. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about the Danny Elfman score kicks in. The piano, bum, 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 bum.
Because he's the only character in the story that gets him.
And no. And then Bruce Wayne is sat in the chair in the Batcave with his glasses on. He pauses it and he just looks at the screen. And he's figured it out. And he's Batman without the costume on. Yeah, he's so good at acting without his eyes, because that's the moment when he realizes that Jack Napier / Jack the Joker is the one who killed his parents. And he doesn't get up and rage. or start throwing things around. He, if I remember correctly, that's the moment where Alfred walks in with Vicky Vale. I mean, let's be honest, Bruce Wayne would sack Alfred for that. Weird narrative choice there, in my opinion. But what I'm trying to say to you is that this Batman is quiet and he is intense, which is what Mark Keaton's very good at. He's not physically imposing. He's a small man, which is.
Although, if I may draw your attention to the "Let's Get Nuts" scene, I do love that scene. I don't know why.
It is good. No, it is good. It is good. It is good. Unfortunately, though, I kind of feel like that's Michael Keaton acting. You know, he's like, "Come on, I'm acting now. Let's act. I'm going to act."
But it does lead to one of the best lines in cinema of the Joker shooting him, turning and say, "Never rob another man's rhubarb." Which I don't even understand what that fucking means, but I love it.
It's because he's claiming he's claiming
Vale. Yeah. I don't know if the analogy flies, but fuck it. If Nicholson's saying it, I agree with you, man.
Oh,
but it is a hilarious scene. It's just beginning to end. It is Keaton. Well, Bruce Wayne even going, "Okay, I've got to act crazy now, so this motherfucker shoots me," and it's comical. I mean, it shouldn't be. At the end of the day, you're seeing a protagonist gunned down by the antagonist, but it's comical.
It's fun. It's a fun scene.
Loads of movies where there are points of like scenes that should be just utterly fucking horrific that you just can't help but kind of belly laugh over.
Yeah,
like Bob.
Oh, I love Bob.
Yes,
remember Bob. As he replicates the Jack Palance line, doesn't he, from earlier on? Bob Grissom. He's underrated, Bob. Really underrated. Let's not talk about the other characters. We're going on so long now. We need to keep this Batman related. A final note on Keaton, though, I just want to say is that the fight scenes are very well done.
Yes,
you know they're not like over the top or
We're
crazy.
Not talking martial arts here or anything like that.
Well, when he fights the guy with the two swords, he just goes chop 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 chop, parries the sword and then palm strikes him. That's fucking awesome.
It's comic book martial arts, yeah.
But there's no like crazy over the top effects. There's no like crazy camera movements. There's no awful like close shots like in the Nolan films. Like Burton is just showing us Batman is a very effective fighter and he kicks ass. Although I'm not sure about him like losing that fight to the big bald guy in the church. Maybe you could say that he is hurt because of the crash in the Batwing, maybe, but I don't know, whatever.
He has been put for a bit of a gauntlet at that point.
But I still never liked it. I mean, but then he uses his smarts to kill him, doesn't he? He like hides in the bell, then like Hurricane Run as him. But yeah, Keaton is important. He is important. Like I said, he innovated a lot of ideas that my number one would carry on, which is obviously Kevin Conroy. It's very difficult to talk about Kevin Conroy nowadays because obviously he passed away, which is very sad. But if you watch any interview with him online, he'll discuss how I don't know if it was because he watched the 89 movie, but there are interviews of him discussing how he believed that Batman was the real character and Bruce Wayne was the mask. And how when playing Bruce Wayne, he always speaks in a high register to make him sound that much more fake. And then he talks in a deeper voice as Batman, doesn't he? And says all the great lines. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman. I mean, regardless of whether or not Michael Keaton's your favourite, when you read the comics, dude, what voice do you hear?
It's Conroy's voice. Yeah, I will give you that. And one thing that always got me about Conroy is I've seen a couple of interviews where he talks normally and then he will snap the voice on.
Yeah.
And it's almost unsettling to watch Batman's voice come from him because it looks detached.
Yes.
But at the same token, you can see he utterly embodies it at the same time.
There is so much. I can't explain it. He captures the conflicted, broken character in that voice somehow. Overly serious, obviously, as is often joked about in the.
But not to an absurd degree.
Well, Robin jokes about how like he can't have a laugh. He's so serious, quite regularly in the cartoon. But yeah, just I don't know how. Maybe it's because he did so much of it and for so long,
and over such an extended period of time.
Yeah, I mean, Keaton's Batman voice is subtle, isn't it? He says, "I'm Batman," And truth is, that is infinitely more threatening than
having to bellow it.
Yeah. He just, just grabs him. What is this? Like, where are you? I'm Batman. And then, it's perfect.
I mean, yeah,
And
our first introduction, Conroy, was the animated series, and that was
yes.
a major thing when we were children.
Well, I'm just going to say that, like, Kevin Conroy's voice is more projected. It is deeper. There is more to it than Keaton's Batman voice.
It does have more of a projection, but it isn't shouted.
Yeah, he still has that quietness to him, that calm intelligence. It's somehow, how did he do it? It's like a combination of pain, remorse, vengeance, intelligence, integrity, all in one go. How? How did he do it?
He was a man who clearly sat down and considered it.
Watch any interview with him to discuss it. Obviously, this is something he's been asked about so many times in his career. But he has talked about it a lot, and he's so articulate and such an intelligent and smart guy. He goes into great detail about it very often, about how he just, as I said, he thought about the character, and he thought Batman's the real character. He
got it.
Yeah, he did. He understood it. I need to build this voice from the pain of a boy losing his parents and grieving and being unable to channel that anger and frustration for 25, 30 years. What would I sound like in that situation? Who would I be? A young boy, any young human being, doesn't understand how to channel their extreme emotions. As adults, do we completely understand how to channel our extreme emotions? I'm sure we don't. I'm sure we make mistakes and we throw our toys out the pram regularly, of course. But we're far more measured, I like to think, than a child. And you've got to think that this kind of scarring, this deep inside anger that this boy would carry for so long, what would a man or a woman, but in this case a man, sound like who has carried that pain
anger
for so long? What would they sound like? And I fucking tell you, man, it would sound like Kevin Conroy doing Batman's voice.
He doesn't need to shout. He doesn't need to express his rage in every syllable.
Nope.
It is a man who his rage is burned to the point where it's cold.
Yes.
And that is something that translated through, not just in the animated series, but through into the games.
Yes.
Wherein, which I will be honest, I did deeply appreciate Conroy doing the voice acting for the games.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, having him and Mark Hamill back, you can't really mention Conroy without Hamill, but
the two of them were so close as well, and it was a joy to see them work together again.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the Arkham games didn't give him much in the way of characterization, let's say, but I mean, we'd had 50, 60, 70 episodes of it in the TV series.
Yeah.
This TV series, this cartoon series, it is very often voted the greatest children's / animated cartoon series of all time. If it's not that, it's The Simpsons.
Oh, it's one of the only cartoon series that actually managed to play on prime time Saturday night American television.
Yeah.
It was considered to be above other comic book other cartoons in general. I mean, Simpsons is the only one that was above it in terms of.
It's the only one that comes close, isn't it?
Yes.
Or is better. And if you were to say to me you preferred it, I'm not going to argue with you. It's just the two are entwined eternally, I think, in terms of top quality, television cartoons.
Yes.
They took the character seriously, didn't they? And respected it. Obviously, having Shirley Walker compose the episodes with music like a film, and the Danny Elfman reimagining of the Batman theme helps to continue that seriousness.
The imagining of Gotham as an Art Deco, it's kind of timeless.
That was continuing the Tim Burton visual storytelling as well, which is a very good choice. All of this contributes, doesn't it? But at the grand scheme of things, though, you need the right man in the cowl. And Kevin Conroy was the right man, and I don't think anyone personally could ever beat him. So I'd just like to say, for me personally, Kevin Conroy is not just a heart pick, he's a head pick. He's both. I've picked him as my number one because while Michael Keaton was important to me, and that film was important to me, just Kevin Conroy's voice in the TV series and his various other appearances have been as important to me. Maybe because of how much there is of it. Maybe if Keaton voiced Batman in the animated series instead of Conroy, I'd be saying Keaton was my number one. It's quite possible. But
I feel that Keaton may not have achieved what Conroy achieved in terms of voice acting alone.
There's a difference between a voice actor and a real life actor, isn't there?
Yes, I feel whilst Keaton portrayed him well visually, Conroy probably had the better voice. I will begrudge you that.
They're two exactly. That's why I always envisioned it would be one. They'd be 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. But it's just a question of. That's
why
for me, I always define them as being very, very close.
Yes, it makes sense.
It was very difficult for me to separate the two of them and decide which one was better. In my personal opinion, I'm not going to say objectively that one is better than the other. They both did phenomenal work with the Batman.
So sorry. Let me. What I was leading to there is. So is Michael Keaton being your number one? Is that a heart pick then? Would you say you picked that because he's the most? You resonate with him and his performance mostly emotionally.
Yes, Batman is a character that he was literally one of the first. He was the first superhero that I grew attached to. I mean, to be honest, in terms of comics, I can't even remember the first comics I read. I've been reading them since I was such a young boy, and Batman was the first character that I could always point to and go, that's Batman. And when it came to movies, seeing Keaton represent my favorite superhero, I saw the Batman before I saw Superman, the movie. And that's why that character has always stayed with me. I mean,
that particular version.
And to be honest, it's acknowledged that in the comic book universe, Batman is considered to be one of the most loved superheroes. He may not be the biggest selling.
He is surely the most popular superhero ever.
Exactly. Surely. I mean, he may not be the biggest selling in terms of comic book sales, but there is a reason why. Who is
the biggest selling in terms of comic book sales?
I believe it's Spider-Man.
Oh, nowadays? Okay, fine. Yeah, it's fine.
But no, even back as far as like the 70s and 80s, Spider-Man was one of the biggest selling comic book runs.
If I remember, in the 90s, it was Spider-Man and X-Men. I know that much.
Yes, and Superman was up there as well. Batman was always close up, but he never peaked on the same sort of level. But I don't know. I mean, there's a reason why when it comes to the Elseworlds, the DC runs where they like to tell alternative stories. With no exaggeration, 3/4 of those Elseworld stories are Batman stories.
I was just about to say, Batman is one of these characters that is the kind of character that can be bent and weaved and inserted and changed and adapted.
And pluck a string and just see which way the story would fall this time.
Look at The Dark Knight Returns, straight up. Probably
Gotham
the first.
By Gaslight, Batman versus Dracula. Yeah. What else? They've even had one.
Superman as well, but I think Batman is probably the most effective.
He's the much more interesting character.
Agreed. He is my favorite superhero. I mean, it's difficult. I would probably say my favorite Marvel property is X-Men. And if you were to say to me, what do you love more, X-Men or Batman? Oh, it depends. It's too difficult. That's
because X-Men encompasses several characters.
Yes. So, yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
I mean, if you were to say the most defining X-Men character, which is probably Wolverine.
I mean, let me put this to you. This might incite some surprise in you or not, or it might make complete sense to you. My two novel series that I've written in my lifetime. You have Millennia and you have Returner. Millennia is like my X-Men. It's an ensemble cast of characters. Returner is my Batman. It's about a Batman-style vigilante in a dark city. And to go with that, Batman is so important to me as a character. It has always been so important to me as a character. And truth be told, actually, while I'm talking about it, I just like to tip my hat actually to all these actors, really, that we've mentioned today, because they've all brought something to the table and done a bloody good job, haven't they? Really, let's be honest. We've been quite lucky.
Not to take anything away from any actors that we haven't mentioned.
No,
there have been actors in the past, such as the likes of Adam West. And
I enjoy Adam West for what.
Yes, and
the Grey Ghost. Come on, is awesome. Do you remember the Grey Ghost?
Yeah, the animated series. Yeah, where he got to reprise. Oh, not
Batman
reprised,
meeting
but
his hero and his
yeah.
inspiration. What a great idea.
Because the great, I mean, that is meant to be a pastiche of the Shadow,
Correct.
who was an inspiration to a degree for the creation of Batman in the first place.
Yeah.
And
Radio series, wasn't it, The Shadow?
the thing is, the Batman has, I mean, in doing some research for this list, there have been numerous Batmen over and over again.
Yeah.
And there have been many actors, some which surprised me, which I saw had taken up the cowl at some point, even if it is just for a short animated movie.
Yes.
And it is interesting to see how many people have represented him in some fashion or another. It made me want to go out and check out a couple of series just to see. I mean, I've yet to watch Gotham, and that's one that I was like curious.
I want to watch it. I watched the pilot, and I enjoyed the pilot. I thought it was an interesting take. I mean, I'm just a sucker for a dark, crime-ridden city and police officers, to be honest with you.
Yes, and throwing Batman.
Noir, anything noir influenced. And then, the Batman iconography. Apparently, the Penguin is fantastic in it. A fantastic character. So I need to get around to that really at some point. That's for discussion another time.
Absolutely.
So without further ado, would you say you have anything else to say about any of these fine actors we've discussed today?
I feel that anything more would be over-egging the pudding at this point, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So let's give us a rundown then, shall we, of our lists as a final footnote on this segment. Mark, would you like to read your list out, please? Start with the honourable mention and then give me 5 to 1.
Okay, so we were leading first with Will Arnett as my honourable mention.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Affleck at number 5, Christian Bale at number 4, Robert Pattinson at number 3. Number 2 was Kevin Conroy, and number 1 was the always classic Michael Keaton.
So it's so odd to me not hear Kevin Conroy at first. I really thought you were going to pick him as your number 1.
As I say,
I
didn't pick him just because we like conflict, but
if I was to pick my heart pick would have been Bale. Really, he's my heart pick.
That high?
Because of Batman Begins. It is literally, I love that movie.
I can't get along with it, man. I'm sorry. Batman Begins has a fucking stupid storyline to it. I'm sorry. I've got to say this. Thing is, I mean, okay, let me just get. I'm going to get this off my fucking chest. Okay, so we've got a device that's in the middle of Gotham that can atomize water. And he sets it off in the middle of Gotham, and you see manhole covers exploding left, right, and center. But there are people which, let's be honest, people are comprised of around about 80% water, and not a single person explodes. That storyline really pissed me off. I don't know why. It's a stupid scientific aspect, which really, it's a comic book movie.
Look, mate, all of Christopher Nolan's films have got half-baked ideas that are just overrun. They all have.
I will be honest, I mean, not getting into the concept of a neutron bomb, and you're in the same universe as a potential Superman who could resolve this plot line inside 30 seconds by drop kicking the bomb into the sun. But it's no, I'm going to let it go. No, it's fine. It's okay. Bale's a good actor, yeah, and he's a good Batman.
I've said so much in this episode. Like the characterization and development of Bruce Wayne in Begins is the reason why. Characterization is king for me. Character and conflict is what is important to me. You know, unfortunately, Keaton was not given enough. You know, maybe if it was Keaton in Batman Begins, I'd be saying it would be Keaton as my
maybe if Keaton had been able to complete the trilogy. Tim Burton was aiming for. So
I don't know. Like in the end, but Tim Burton never gave him the spotlight, though. That is the biggest problem.
Thing is, I mean, Tim Burton fixated too much on a concept which I can kind of get behind in terms of the villain define the hero.
To a degree, it does. But Batman has his own story, and he has the most complex story. Maybe only Barry Allen comes close to having such a complex route to superherodom. You know, meaningful. Which is probably one of the reasons why they're such close friends. Anyway, this episode is going on and on and on. Let me give my top 5. My honourable mention, for God's sake. My God, man. My honourable mention was the Honourable Peter Weller. Number 5 was Robert Pattinson. Number 4 was Ben Affleck. Number 3 was Michael Keaton. Number 2 was Christian Bale. And number 1 was Kevin Conroy. Well, that's it. We've done it, Mark. Once again, we've completed a podcast. How do you feel?
I feel like I'm getting into the rhythm of this now.
You certainly enjoyed discussing Batman, that's for sure.
Let's say it's brought up a couple of emotions that maybe hit a little harder than I was expecting. I will be honest. I absolutely do not apologise for that. And I don't apologise for any future outbursts that may occur.
I look forward to them. Incidentally, we had to cut out a section, didn't we? Because it just went on for so long. Oh my God. I was not. It's the same thing as what happened with the first episode. I had this plan of like 4 parts. We just couldn't stop talking. This does not bode well. But I suppose it means we're always going to have something to talk about, always going to have something to record, but we're never going to have everything recorded or talked about.
Yeah.
So anyway, without further ado, I suppose at this point I should now tell you what we're going to cover in the next episode. I will be discussing with Mark the movie Annihilation, which you've seen, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes. But I've also read the book just recently, and it's very clear that the book/film sort of exists in the same remit as Tarkovsky and Lovecraft. So I'm looking forward to discussing aspects of not just the book and the film, but what I'm going to, from now on, label as zone fiction. And what else, Mark?
I myself will be leading a conversation on a classic game from our childhood, which is Twisted Metal.
Ooh.
Something that's been brought to my forefront because of the recent adaptation into a television series, which I'm going to start watching.
Excellent.
And I'll come back to you with my initial thoughts and feelings about it.
Ooh, looking forward to that. Okay, then. Well, that's it. I suppose now I should say to you all, hopefully, we'll see you soon.
And we'll catch you a little later.